The hardest game in the world, where he was ranked number 1, announced that it was closing. He fumed in rage, until they said a new version was about to be released. Right now we are in the final stage of the tutorial, and over 100 players just entered this portal. The problem? In the entire history of this game, this difficulty was cleared exactly once, by one player. And now the same game is reality. There are no second characters. That portal is basically a suicide mission. Our boy checks the numbers and can't believe how many people are lining up to die. Every difficulty is climbing fast as hell. Maybe it's the whole country in here, maybe the whole world? See that one player who cleared it back when this was just a game? That was him. And even he needed dozens of destroyed accounts to pull it off. Because in that game, each account had only 3 lives, so he kept dying over and over until he cracked it. He genuinely doesn't know if it's possible with 1 life. But of course, Hell difficulty has the best rewards in the entire tutorial. And if someone on this planet can finish it, it has to be the guy who already did it once, so he steps toward the hardest stage of them all. But to get here, we gotta understand dungeonization. A sudden event, portals started opening in the real world, spitting out monsters, and every area they touched began converting into a dungeon. If nobody clears it in time, the area breaks, and the monsters inside multiply, until they spill out and swallow the city. In the game, that was an annoying mechanic. But here that shit is the apocalypse, and it happened across the whole country. Our boy was taking the elevator home when, from one second to the other, a mission popped up, telling him he had 1 minute to get out before parasites ate him alive. Bro had no time to think. He shouted and forcefully opened the door to get out. Completely out of breath, he noticed that strangely the roaches stayed inside. That was his first time seeing anything game-related in the real world. He thought it was some withdrawal, since the game had closed and he hadn't played in the past week. Well, he still made it out with 13 seconds left. Reward: 1 long sword. He barely gets to hold it before he hears something to his side that hits him so hard his health bar goes into the red zone. He faced plants like trash and tries to get up, already exhausted. This little gremlin takes a deep breath and tries to send a roar, but then bro notices. He was a tiny little green hasbula, with a hammer. Wait, caws like a mamacita, he's short and fierce, and almost hits him again. He tries to run away, but is hit with a restricted area panel. He had to finish the tutorial. Hasbula throws the hammer that sinks into the wall, when suddenly our boy starts to get some rewards from the past. Count he had in version 1 of this game. His body calms down, and all of a sudden Hasbula seemed even smaller and weaker, almost cute. So he gets the sword ready, and the moment the little gremlin comes jumping, he plunges the sword through the monster's torso. Damn, what violence. But then green Hasbulas start spawning around. Now he understood that this was way easier than he thought, and a genocide began. He kept slashing and decapitating the goblins, until the whole floor was empty. Now it hits him. That was exactly like the game. The windows, the accepts, the effects. And if that's the case, the infamous system window appears, and he has the skill that he grinned the most to get, Heavenly Body, S rank, the one that he K, the number 1 ranked player, got. When the game server shut down, they hosted a poll, asking players to bring some stuff to version 2 of the game, and that skill was the one he selected. But not everything goes as we want in life. The skill was debuffed, and only had a simple effect of making his body more adapted to combat, a partial activation basically. That's when he notices that maybe that's the reason for him being so calm. He had 5 seconds of calm before the whole building began to tremble. He knew exactly what that meant. Dungeonization was about to begin. The amount of monsters alive exceeded the region's capacity, so even more would spawn, and the whole city would get wiped out. Seeing the 10-minute timer, he knew that was the ticking bomb. The smart play is obvious. Save himself, but the screams start reaching him from the upper floors. Hammer goblins spawning in living rooms, next to sleeping families, in the middle of hallways. He stops, imagines the massacre he'd be leaving behind. Then he remembers he's the number 1 ranker. There's only one way to stop people from dying, clear the dungeon, so he changed plans. If this works like the tutorial, the boss hates light, which means it's hiding at the lowest point of the building. After cleaning that first wave, a portal had appeared and he ignored it. But now he's sure that this is the path that takes him straight to the underground parking lot. Down there he spots the boss immediately, a green giant standing between him and the portal. But our boy knows something nobody else does. There's a bug in this exact fight. Right before the area fully converts, the boss freezes for a moment. Every veteran used it to farm easy levels, The moment a monster is dragged to Earth from the other world, it goes through a 1-minute shortness of breath, its body struggling to adjust to the new reality. In that window, they're nearly defenseless, so he waits, timer ticking down. Goblins pouring through the portal, but is waiting for the exact second the giant locks up. When the clock hits 1 minute and the boss wakes up, the negative status instantly affects it. Bro rushes from behind the pillar like a madman, activating the now F-rank skill Calmness. He gets on top of a car to avoid being hit by the Hasbolahs, and the moment the boss tries to swing at him, he easily dodges due to the freeze debuff. With it, the monster left an opening, and he approaches, cleaving the creature's head with ease. My boy wasn't the rank one for no reason. But things outside were much worse, because if the game was already brutal for players to adjust, reality was worse. The whole country fell into complete chaos in an instant, and some people watching the news were sure it was fake, some kind of joke, like this absurdly thick idol named. Only in Manhwa do idols look like that. Real-life idols weigh less than this girl's left thigh. Sorry, got distracted. Korea's biggest star, movies, shows, sold out everything, the national image of sweetness. Her whole team is calling the monster footage CGI, while she's watching some influencer walk up to a lizard man on a livestream and almost get his face eaten off. She jumps out of her chair. She recognizes it instantly. That's a dungeon break, because Hannah is hiding a secret. In the old servers there were 12 rankers, the ones treated as gods, and one of them was a middle-aged gunslinger famous for insane accuracy and fearless gunplay. That account was hers. Using a voice changer and being a game addict, she climbed to the top without people knowing. Her manager takes her phone away mid-argument about this being all fake news. She tried to talk about this looking like a game, which only made him more furious. He had said hundreds of times for her to focus on her career and stop playing games all day. But then that earthquake rips through the building and throws them both to the floor. Everyone falls and the guys ask if she's fine. Instead of panicking, she snatches the phone back, and that's when she sees the online rumors about the game being back were real. As she clicks login, the system tells her if she wants to receive her reward from Season 1. Magic revolver. She screams yes, and the item materializes in her hands, but there's no time to enjoy it, because a portal opens right in front of them. Her manager tries to warn her, but Hannah is already on her feet, watching as something steps out, a gal. She plants herself in place and decides it's time to show her manager how to drop one ugly monster with a single shot. Except the shot comes out weak and everyone just stands there, even the monster waiting for something to happen. After a beat, Hannah starts yelling at the system only to find out the sync still isn't finished. She can't keep cursing at it though, because now she has to stay alive, dodging the gal's attacks while still complaining the whole time. Finally, the sync is complete. Now she can finish what she started, pulling the trigger and firing a strong blast of energy that pierces straight through the monster. Her manager is left frozen like a scared rabbit and Hannah notices, so she tells him to keep running because she has things to do. She needs to find the one person who knows everything about the game, Kay, and Kay is still in the underground parking lot. Right after cutting off the goblin boss's head and stopping the dungeon's transformation, the monsters start to disappear. Still, Kay notices the blood and damage are all still there. The building is safe for now. He heads back to the portal where his next mission appears, the tutorial, the labyrinth of choices, where he has to clear every path given to him. Kay realizes this is only the beginning, so he decides to break the tutorial again and he gets sent into the original Dreamside tutorial, which not only looks great but feels insanely real. Kay can't help praising it when portals of different colors suddenly surround him, forming the labyrinth of choices. Each portal has a different difficulty, with rewards that match how hard it is. For Kay, the best move is to pick Infernal from the start. The problem is, the game really means Infernal. It's basically impossible. Players complain about it forever and only one person ever beat it. Kay himself, though, he remembers burning through a lot of accounts to do it. Now he only has one life. Then he checks the current state of the tutorial and sees thousands of players with more joining every moment. More than 100 are already in Infernal, and Kay starts to realize this isn't just happening in one country. It's worldwide. He thinks about the hundreds who will die and hopes they can hold on, because for now there's nothing he can do except survive. That's all the reason he needs to choose Infernal and step inside without hesitation. Starting his first mission, protect the goddess statue from a golem monster for at least 5 minutes or die. Stone golems begin to form as the timer starts. Kay understands there's no turning back and the small golems rush him like they want his sword. But he smashes them so easily it doesn't feel worthy of Infernal at all. He figures it must be because of his celestial body, but he doesn't relax. He knows the hard part hasn't started yet. Then the fallen golems get back up and the system hits him with a stacking debuff. Every 5 seconds his movement drops below 0. While the monsters gain more speed. That's when the real nightmare starts. Second by second his body grows slower while the enemies get faster. Now the only thing that matters is reading patterns, guessing trajectories, and moving before the attacks are thrown. That's the real horror of this mission, and it's only the start. He hangs on somehow until 3 minutes pass, and then comes the reason he risks so much. The hidden mission unlocks, and with 2 minutes left, the broken pieces of the golems he destroyed start joining together, stone after stone, until a giant golem rises and shakes the whole area with its roar. It attacks at once, and K barely dodges before getting crushed. He knows he only made it this far because he has a skill no other tutorial gives. Now the real test finally begins, with the golem chasing him non-stop and smashing everything in its path. K waits for the right moment and throws a heavy slash, but the hit only chips his own sword. That makes it clear this won't be easy. He has no choice but to keep circling the monster and measuring the distance. He remembers that if he fails here, everything he did before was for nothing. So he checks his inventory and smiles when he finds exactly what he needs as the golem charges straight at him. K waits with Murek's hammer, a massive weapon he plans to use to crush that wall of stone. He lunges in and lands a huge blow that leaves the golem without fingers. The monster keeps attacking, but a confident K spins hard and hits it again. Still, he quickly realizes it's hard to wear down its health, so he aims for its weak point, the core in its stomach. The bad part is it's too high up, and unlike in the game, he doesn't have a double jump. Then he spots an opening and dives forward, trying to bring it down to his level. He slips past it, then with a hard turn smashes the golem's leg that sends it falling backward right into range of a crushing hit. He destroys the core into pieces and finishes the golem, clearing the tutorial level. He does it with only 37 seconds left. With that done, he gives his huge hammer a quick thanks. Then he sees his stats rise to rank A, gaining enough experience to activate the skill Ryan. He's excited about the rewards, but knows this is only the start. His plan is to clear every tutorial scenario just like in the game. Sometime later, he's surrounded by destroyed slimes. He gets more excited because it keeps getting easier and is ready to keep hunting slime monsters. He throws his knife and catches exactly what he was looking for, a kind of dark energy he can track, thanks to Ryan, his new skill that lets him see the flow of mana. With that, he clears the second scenario and unlocks the hidden mission. Then a presence appears as a huge demon woman named Nading. She's sure that now she's been awakened, K has only one fate, and because he was wise enough to summon her, she'll gladly grant him death, but he doesn't even let her finish. Cape finishes, and the next thing she sees is a stream of energy cutting through her body from top to bottom. It's Cape's fast slash, and both drop to the ground, leaving Nading split in half. In shock, she realizes too late that she has to return to her main body if she wants to survive. K doesn't let it impress him, and before she leaves, he promises to hunt her later. With every tutorial scenario complete, his body starts to glow as he receives all the stacked rewards, and the system sends him to the village. That gets KF fired up because now he can finally start leveling for real. Later, a portal opens in a ruined street and KA returns to Earth. He tries to figure out how many days it took him to finish the labyrinth of choices, only to realize 3 months have passed since he left. That's way too long, so the first thing he needs to do is see whether his home has been destroyed. Meanwhile, at a Seoul high school, a large group of survivors is gathered. It looks like they're about to try something very risky if they want to live, and everyone argues while asking the opinion of the man who seems to be their leader, a police officer named Desu, who is sure they have to try clearing the dungeon. Another guy snaps and yells that if they try to clear even an E rank one, they'll all die. Desu brushes that aside and says he's scared too, but if they do nothing, a dungeon break will happen. That's when an uncleared dungeon turns red, spitting out stronger and stronger monsters. That's exactly what's happening at the school, which is apparently about to rise to D rank. The officer hates that no one there even cleared hard mode. That means what they're trying to do is far beyond what they can handle. Even so, he makes one thing clear: if they don't act now, they'll die anyway when the difficulty keeps rising. Then a young salesman named Higuan asks why this dungeon is growing so fast when the others have barely reached F class. Daegu answers that this dungeon is full of undead, basically zombies. He knows that still doesn't really explain enough, so he puts it simply: it's like in the movies, if they bite you, you turn, even if you're already dead, which is what caused the first dungeon break when it was still a lower rank, that left a lot of students trapped inside the classrooms with no real way to survive. So he tells them they've already lost too much family, lovers, and friends, and urges them to fight for the people still alive, to protect that changed world. He asks them to follow him into the dungeon, and the whole group rushes forward. Desu knows dungeons are no longer just disasters. Now, they're trials people have to clear. Even if this move is reckless, they have to finish it if they want to live. He hates sending weak rookies in, but he still places all his hope in their best player Hannah, who shouts to fire everyone up as they move in. Meanwhile, at the apartments, not a single old person, woman, or child is left alive. Kei shows respect by closing the eyes of a corpse, frustrated that he still hasn't found anyone alive, so he keeps going until he reaches a red gate explaining that this is the hard level, blue is easier, green is normal, and red is basically the last step before black, a full dungeon break. This one has only 24 hours left. Seeing a recent campfire nearby, he thinks someone here might still be able to help before the break, but then the hours start dropping like seconds, which terrifies K because that can only mean it's about to release an even bigger, stronger wave of monsters, enough to wipe everything out. The gate keeps giving off more power. The time keeps falling and K knows it's about to burst. He goes in to find the cause before everyone inside dies. With that step he enters the Ranky dungeon, which seems to twist the size and shape of everything inside. Now he looks like an ant in a giant classroom watching for any movement. Then from the floor a possessed skeleton rises. Level 40. The protagonist is almost amused, like he just walked into a zombie movie. He summons his sword as the skeleton charges wildly at him, only to get split in half by a single slash. Even then the thing still tries to bite his face. K blocks its annoying teeth, irritated that it's so hard to kill something already dead, until he finds the weak point, the neck. He has to break the core to purge it, so he keeps it simple, slams it down and crushes the core, leveling up. Something he missed since the tutorial capped his growth too fast. He thinks about spending his points, but there's no time for that because more skeletons start rising from the floor. Exactly what he expected. He starts tearing through them without wasting a second. By the end he earns the surprise player title. It's more tiring than it looked, but he doesn't stop when he notices scattered remains he didn't make. That tells him the players who entered before him can't be far, so he focuses on finding them. At the same time, Daesu and the others run after a huge explosion and barely make it to cover. Not everyone is that lucky though. Some get surrounded by skeletons and are left completely helpless. The officer manages to hide, exhausted and confused about how it all went wrong. An hour earlier they had been moving through the dungeon normally, taking out skeletons without much trouble. It was even easy for the weaker ones, and when one rookie got too cocky and nearly lost his head, Hannah saved him with a perfect shot, then scolded him for being careless. That only makes Daesu trust her more as his best chance to keep this from turning into a massacre, but everything changes in 1 second. When a brutal explosion throws them through the air, dazed on the floor. Daesu orders everyone to spread out so they won't be an easy target. Then he spots a masked pair far too strong for a dungeon of that level and realizes they aren't monsters. The players hunting them. The only choice left is to run. More explosions go off around them, caused by one of the masked players, who laughs like this is all a game. Daesu guesses the real target is Hannah, but then one masked player appears right in front of him and blocks his path. Mocking him, Daesu tries to strike back with his staff, but the other man dodges easily and in a cheerful voice calls him by name, throwing him off. That 1 second distraction is enough for the masked player to gather energy right in front of him. Daesu reacts in time and dives out of range before it detonates. He survives, but then he hears the masked man laughing at him like he's just a bug. Daesu readies his spear Guava Chatter, a powerful hidden rank item. He knows he's still not on the masked man's level. This guy clearly rivals the top players, but he won't give up. If he can close the distance, he might at least limit those explosions. So he charges in. Bad move. The masked man just laughs at the attempt, then snaps his fingers and creates a massive blast that sends the cop flying into a wall. Daesu feels helpless against the player who keeps taunting him until the voice makes Daesu realize it belongs to a man he arrested a long time ago. The psycho confirms it by removing his mask. He's the guy who killed 7 people and was sentenced to death. Someone Daesu helped capture, shocked and too weak to move. Daesu can only curse the system for turning him into a player and hope at least some of his team survives, but Don tells him his men have probably already finished off the rest and promises to do the same to him as he lifts his foot to crush him. Right then a huge explosion races into the area, leaving Daesu confused while Don quickly puts his mask back on. The protagonist arrives, glad to find someone still alive, but he notices the strange mask on the man standing there and assumes they were fighting each other. Daesu tries to warn him, but the protagonist runs in right away. Don smiles sorry for him, but not willing to let any interference slide, and snaps his fingers, setting off a huge blast that engulfs the whole area. Daesu can only despair, thinking he's about to watch another person die to someone this strong. Kei stays calm, guessing the mask is connected to what's been happening in the dungeon, but after clearing the tutorial's maze of choices, this guy shouldn't be able to do much to him. Don tries to blow him up again, but Kei dodges easily. As he keeps slipping past the blasts, he figures out what he's dealing with. A PK, one of the red players who attack others to raise their stats. In a game where everyone only has 3 lives, they're considered the worst beings of all. That alone is bad enough, but what really angers him is seeing the bodies on the floor. They weren't killed by monsters. Now he knows exactly what he's facing. Don tells Kei that if he walks away he'll stop attacking. It sounds a little too good for someone like him, and Kei doesn't buy it. Daesu tries to warn him not to trust a known serial killer. A name Kei has already heard on the news, but after seeing what is done in here, Kei doesn't need a file to decide he won't let him leave alive. Then he senses something strange and without hesitation crushes a masked player who was hidden with camouflage thanks to Rowan. Right after that he throws a dagger straight at the other hidden player, admitting the plan wasn't bad, but power like that always comes with a cost, and now he's going to show them. In a blink he appears in front of the masked man who tries to stop him, but K's has already seen enough of his cruelty, so he makes it clear he'll show none in return. Don has no choice and releases all his power, forcing K to step back for the first time. Even so, K only moved to grab his dagger back, ready to keep dodging the explosions until he can get close and land a devastating slash that leaves the killer dying, his life pouring out. Baloo drains away as his life finally ends. Then the system gives K a huge amount of points and he's shocked. If the system already counts those killers as monsters, then they must have murdered plenty of players, so he feels no guilt at all. When he gets the item Dungeon Herb, he realizes there's another valuable item here, so he needs to hurry. First he checks on Dasu, who thanks him for saving him and for killing the man who murdered his sister. K brushes it off as something that had to be done, but Dasu asks one more favor. His group got scattered by those masked players who were apparently escaped prisoners. They killed at least 10 of his people, but their main goal seems to be taking out the sniper Clark. That name leaves K stunned when he learns the target is that old ranker, so the two keep moving through the huge auditorium carrying some corpses on their backs, while K is still surprised that the famous gunslinger is a woman. Dasu doesn't care about that part. They're talking about the idol herself, Hannah. K can't believe an idol made it into the top 12 under the name Clark, the most skilled shooter in the whole game. He even thinks Hannah gave her avatar a ton of style, maybe a little too much since it looks so different. Dasu is focused on something else. He realizes the plan really worked. That's why they're carrying bodies on their backs. The corpses keep the mobs from reacting, all thanks to that protection skill the prisoners had. It apparently can't be removed and stays active even 24 hours after death, which is creepy but useful. They move through a bloody path full of bodies, but what truly worries them is the system warning that only 3 hours remain before the break. That confirms K's suspicion. Someone is speeding it up. Most likely they're using dungeon water to wear down the dungeon's internal timer and force a flower to appear. This isn't something some amateur would do, since dungeon water is hard to get in a low-rank dungeon. The answer is obvious. Someone experiences pulling the strings because a bunch of prisoners couldn't manage a supply like that on their own. It seriously unsettles him because he knows something big is coming and he can only hope Hannah is still alive. At that exact moment she's still fighting for her life, dodging a giant sword that nearly cuts her in two. Before she can breathe, a rain of arrows comes down on her. She jumps away fast to escape, though acrobatics clearly aren't her thing and the landing hurts. What really annoys her though is having to deal with both a huge monster and a bunch of prisoners who won't stop getting in the way. Especially because this isn't just any giant, it's the dungeon boss. The Death Knight Von Dishy, and Hannah can tell at once is powerful but definitely clumsy with basic swordplay and slow moves. For a long-range shooter like Hannah, dodging him should be easy, and it is. She slips past his attacks without much trouble. The real problem starts whenever she finds a clear shot because the archers ruin it every time. So all she can do now is stay undercover, annoyed that they dare shoot at someone as pretty as her. Even so, she still can't figure out why the knight ignores the prisoners. Maybe they have some kind of immunity, since they're clearly human and they're hunting her. Unlike them, she still hesitates to kill another person. Her morals are holding her back. Still, she forces herself to remember this isn't a game anymore, and if she wants to live she has no choice. She shuts her eyes for a moment, tracing the direction the arrows came from, certain there's a leader right ahead. She darts out from cover in an instant and pulls the trigger. The shot flies true and hits the masked man right in the head, that only makes the others attack harder, sending another wave of arrows at her. She has to dodge both those and the giant swings, trying to get back into cover while realizing she's close to collapsing from exhaustion. What makes it worse is that just dodging him is draining her health. This game feels way too real, and then a notice pops up. Only 3 hours remain before the rupture. She doesn't understand why the time is dropping so fast, but there's no chance to think about it. The knight finds her again and all she can do is run, sure that at her current level she can't beat him. With the dungeon falling apart faster and faster, her only choice is to keep running until she's had enough, turns around, and faces him head on. She fires and the hit stuns the knight for 5 seconds. That's just enough time to activate Blood Bullet, creating a huge orb above her packed with trembling energy, but the monster wakes up sooner than it should and charges again. Hannah barely avoids it, pouring the last of her strength into the rifle. Her body is at its limit. It all comes down to one shot at the core, then a voice cuts in and breaks her focus. She gets thrown through the air, too drained to steady herself. As she falls she thinks this is the end and can only accept it, but someone rushes in at full speed just as the knight lifts its sword to split her in two. The blow crashes into a shield and Kay appears at the last second, catching her mid-air and taking the hit. Hannah is still trying to process it. She's not shocked to see him. She's shocked because she knows who he is. Once they land, Kay quickly checks if she's okay, and she is, but she's more interested in asking who the hell he is. She doesn't get the chance because the demonic knight lets out a roar that shakes the air and starts evolving. It releases a brutal wave of energy and Hannah can barely stay on her feet. This isn't the same enemy anymore. Now they're facing a D-class boss, Lord Demon Bonakai. As it keeps growing, Hana sees the perfect chance to run and Daisu arrives just in time to see the disaster unfolding. Hana insists they can't win, so the smart move is to get out, but when no arrows fall she realizes the prisoners are probably blocking the exit. That means they'll have to fight, but if she has to choose she'd rather face criminals than something that already feels impossible. The problem is Keikula doesn't look like he's planning to retreat. He walks toward the monster and Hana tries to stop him. She tells him that with his gear he has no chance. He admits that Little Sword is wrecked and says he'll need another weapon, which only makes her more frustrated. Ignoring most of what she says, he asks Daisu for his weapon. The officer hesitates for a second. It's level 80 gear. Not something just anyone can use, but the moment Keikula grabs it he recognizes it right away, the Wave Hunter's sword. It isn't supposed to show its true power without the required level, yet in his hands the sealed skill awakens waves. Hana is stunned. She can't understand how he's strong enough to break the seal. Then she remembers the skills he used to save her and it clicks. He's no ordinary player. He's a high-level one and now he's ready to hunt. As the monster stirs, Keikuli moves in without warning, while Hana watches his next move. He starts his charge the moment the demon attacks. Keikula blocks it and notices it's still using the same old patterns, so he activates Wave Spear, stirring waters, trapping it in a twisting vortex. Even so, with one heavy blow the demon tears through the waves and the Prota realizes that if it struggled at all it's because the evolution still isn't complete. That gives him a chance. Though for now staying still is smarter, because bullets are flying everywhere. All of them aim straight at the demon, courtesy of Hana. She's still annoyed because she has no idea where this guy came from or how he can use such an advanced formula, while she backs him up at full power. Keikula tells her to focus on the demon. Hana snaps that she knows, then opens fire and tears into the monster. It's enough to stun it for 3 seconds and the Prota uses that window to ready his spear, building momentum as he activates furious waves. He lunges forward with everything he's got, calling up a surging tide that starts drilling through the demon until it finally pierces straight through. A huge line of holes is left in its body before it drops to the ground, defeated, and begins to fade away. The system announces its defeat and the Prota keeps leveling up as the dungeon is cleared. Meanwhile, outside the gate a group of criminals waits for Clark, their target, to come out. One of them thinks that if nobody has come out yet maybe Clark already died, which wasn't part of the plan but it would make sense against a D-rank boss. Their leader decides to head back and report, then suddenly stops when one of his men makes a scene and points at the portal, where a notice says the dungeon has been cleared, blocking monster access. They think that's impossible until another message reaches them and then they understand. Kel is there. At that same moment Keikuli overhears them talking about him but he doesn't care. Right now all he cares about is returning the weapon to Daisu. Then Hana walks up with stars in her eyes and asks him straight out if he's K, staring at him with open admiration. The Proto-10's almost proud of being famous, but before he can answer Daisu cuts in and says no. His main reason is simple. Keikuli is supposedly still inside the labyrinth of opportunities and even if he had gotten out, showing up right at a dungeon rupture would be way too much of a coincidence. Hana agrees completely, saying there's no way Kim would just happen to appear at this exact rupture. So even while Kim tries to say it really is him, she brushes it off and apologizes for asking instead of thanking him for saving her. Just like that, the Proto loses his chance to reveal who he is. So they move on and start looking for survivors. They find a big group hiding in a school storage room. Daisu is relieved. Just moments ago he thought no one else was left. As they're about to leave they hear a signal. More people are hiding nearby. Some apologize for not helping and feel guilty for staying behind. But Daisu tells them that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that they're alive. Kim watches from a distance and agrees. If you're not strong, hiding isn't cowardly. It's a simple way to live and fight another day. Even so, he notices something important. Before anyone decides anything, they all look to one person first. Some are worried about Hana too, but she insists she's fine. She calls it a small mistake, though Daisu clearly doesn't see it that way. Still, arguing now won't help. What matters is getting out, and they hope the Proto will guide them back to camp. So they move out with Hana and Kim in front, clearing the way without much trouble. The group isn't surprised by Hana's strength, but the newcomer shocks them. Daisu promises to explain everything later, once they're safe. They eventually reach Banju Station, which surprises the Proto. He can't tell if they picked it on purpose, but the monsters that escape the dungeon hate tight spaces, so the station works as a natural shelter. They head through the corridors until they reach camp, and the moment they arrive, the tension breaks. Women, kids, and elderly people rush toward the officer, crying in relief when they see them return. Among them an old man steps up and asks Daisu to rest and eat something. Seeing that, Kim sits down too. Even if the fight didn't wear him out physically, the deaths and killings, they were real, and mentally he's in bad shape, so much that he almost falls asleep. He jerks awake at once, wipes the drool away, refuses to rest and decides to check the boss rewards instead. One is the Sword of Resentment, Bondi, which draws power from the feelings of those killed unfairly and comes with the skill Extragula, he can tell it's amazing. But even with all his save points, he still isn't high enough level to use it. He needs to reach level 121st. Still, since Daisu can use Wave Hunter, he figures a weaker version might be usable. Then he checks the second reward. A very powerful book, but it's sealed too, which means he can't use that either. So even though he feels these rewards could help him become number 1 again, his only option is to keep working harder. But right now all his attention shifts to a tiny blue squirrel that looks dead. When he touches its nose, it suddenly wakes up only to flop onto the floor. It starts complaining in squirrel language, then passes out again from hunger. A nose twitch brings it back and it starts searching for food, running around like a real squirrel. That leaves Kane confused at first, until he remembers this is his pet from Dreamside, the one that stayed with him through his whole journey. Seeing it act like this tells him only one thing: something delicious must be nearby. Right now it looks like a toy squirrel, but its true form is a monster that devours what it finds tastiest. Dungeons made by the Dark Mage Gregory. He's glad to have it back after all this time as a reward, but he still can't understand why it's reacting this way in a place full of people, which makes him start to think something here shouldn't be here. While the squirrel keeps whining about being hungry, the proto tries to figure out whether this is just a bug, a penalty, or proof that something tied to a dungeon is really in this place. So he picks it up and mostly ignores it, until he notices the fingers of a boy who survived the dungeon, starting to transform. While Dasso and Hannah put together a hunting team to wipe out the nearby skeletons, most people would rather leave them alone and slip by without taking the risk. That's exactly why Desu wants them hunted. First, he doesn't want them scattering, hurting other people. Second, this is a chance to level up. Now that they're outside the dungeon's debuff, it's also 3 o'clock the time when undead are at their weakest. Even so, he makes it clear no one will be forced to join, so they split the work. One hunting team, and another group staying behind to guard the camp. Before they head out, Desu says the newcomers should introduce themselves, starting with him. He's a police officer trained for combat. Next is Higuan, who used to be a salesman and now proudly says he's at least not dead weight. To Kay that is an awful introduction. Then comes the idol, and her fans get excited right away. She keeps it short, just her name and that she's good with a gun. To her that's enough, since she's already well known. The next person is not. Han John is a rich daddy's boy and it shows in his flashy top-tier Dreamside gear, which is more pretty than useful. No matter what he claims, the introductions keep going until Desu brings up Kay. Before he can speak, Han recognizes him as Kang So-hong and starts mocking him. Kay has no idea how he knows him, then realizes they went to the same high school. Back then Kay had the role of the school loser, mocked, shoved around, looked down on by the same guy pointing at him now. To Han, nothing has changed. He laughs, saying Kay still looks like a failure and should show him the same respect as before. Kay just stares at him, trying to find anything left of the ridiculous kid from back then. Looks like the only thing surgery didn't change was the tan. Han clearly wants to drag them back to those old days, but Hannah shuts him down. She won't let him talk like that to the boy who saved her and demands an apology right now. Some people complain they're fighting over something pointless, but Kay stays quiet until he decides to tell the truth and introduce himself as Kay. The others look like they think he's lying, except Hannah, who lights up because her gut feeling was right. Desu feels a little bad for doubting her, but after seeing how Kay fights it makes sense. Most of them believe him, but Han insists the loser is tricking them until he notices the boss drop on Kay's chest. Bondi even then. He tells himself Clark must have killed the boss and Kay just picked up the reward, so he presses him asking for his level. Kay answers 37. That gives Han the nerve to keep pushing, swearing the Real Kay isn't even a Christian, which is news to Kay too. Still, it's time for the hunt, and Kay activates Ryan to give clear orders to the group so they can hit the hidden skeletons. Han gets more and more jealous while Desu steps forward, takes a deep breath and yells for everyone to get ready. A huge horde of skeletons is coming. He clears a path fast with his spear and warns them not to get careless. The others struggle hard to hold the monsters back. Some are close to breaking, but Hannah covers everyone's backs. Meanwhile, Kay has to put up with that tan clown getting cocky just because he smashed a few skeletons. Still, Kay can't help remembering the rich kid who used to call him a loser and send him out to buy bread with 50,000 won, having no clue what it really cost. In the end, Kay treated it like a part-time job and kept 49,000 for himself, so he lets it slide. Besides, leveling up isn't even his goal right now. Meanwhile, Goran keeps eating every bone it finds on the way. Kay tries using it like a guide to spot more enemies, though it's already getting kind of chubby and its hunger starts pulling it southeast. More skeletons show up there, but when Kay checks them, they're not what he's looking for. What he does find is a perfect skull for Goran. He tosses it over an annoyance and the little squirrel happily catches it. The others celebrate their new levels, but it's time to head back before dark. Satisfied with their progress, Desu goes to find Kay, then decides to give him space when he sees him talking to the squirrel, which has eaten so much it can barely move. Then its eyes suddenly go wide after picking up a really tasty essence, as Desu gets everyone ready to leave. Kay asks them to check one more place, a flower shop. The Moment they step inside, everyone feels a poisonous aura. This is what Goran had been tracking, an E-ranked dungeon, Garden of Death. They get a mission to wipe out the virus and the Plant King to stop another break. Hannah is confused by the virus info, Spore, a variant that seems to have already infected the NPCs nearby. Kay finally understands why Goran reacted in the dungeon. He remembers the sick man, the dark fingers, red face, and collapsing body, all caused by this dungeon's virus. Unlike goblin or undead dungeons, this one is made only of plant monsters. They can't move, but they spread poisonous spores, the same ones, it seems, that already affected people in the station. Kay is sure it's only a matter of time before they turn into monsters. The virus mostly hits normal humans since, like NPCs, they have no resistance. Players aren't affected, but the plants have to be destroyed before they evolve. Everyone is scared to try because night is almost here, when monsters get a buff. But Desu worries that if they leave it alone it could trigger a break and put even the people at the station in danger. No one is fully sure, but after trading looks they decide to take the risk. They enter the dungeon with Han going in last and rushing toward the stronger members of the team. Once inside, Hannah can't help wondering if they really brought the strongest people. Considering Han is here, she remembers how Desu split the group, sending everyone else back to camp while the ones he judged most capable handle the dungeon. He believes Hannah and Kay should be enough, but the dungeon needs at least 4 people to enter, so he brings the one guy with decent gear, the only dead weight who might actually make it out alive. Even then Han keeps whining about why the protagonist was included, and it starts to wear everyone down. To make it worse, Han acts like he knows more than Kay. Grabbing the apple, Kay warns him not to touch. He ignores him and is just about to bite it. When Hannah fires and kills the creature stuck to the fruit, Han goes from arrogant to grateful little kitten in seconds. Right then Desu knows bringing him was a mistake. They keep moving until they reach the greenhouse where the dungeon boss is waiting, the feared Plant King, a monstrous sunflower called the Watcher of Death, surrounded by ugly-faced flowers. Everyone knows a king-class enemy means higher difficulty. But Kay also knows beating it will give them a flower that works almost like a cure. If you bite it you can make an antidote for diseases. Desu sees the chance and asks Kay to help him get it. Han, lost in his own fantasy, thinks they mean him. He puffs up with pride even though no one is really paying attention. That's because the mood suddenly changes as they step into a place where the air turns thick and rotten, the opposite of a flower scent. Then they see it. The king is right in front of them and Kay reacts first. He orders everyone to dodge and they barely move. In time before hundreds of vines shoot out from the monster's mouth, the group scatters and Desu holds his breath, afraid someone got left behind, but everyone is still standing. Even Hannah is already firing, not wasting a second. Han meanwhile keeps feeding his own ego, sure he'll be the one to finish the boss. That fantasy dies fast when a plant from the ground almost swallows him. Kay saves him again, then snaps at him hoping he'll use some common sense. No king comes without guards. That hits the tanned idiot right in the pride. Kay activates Rigwin and gets serious. His goal is simple: reach the Plant King. The problem is the whole field of flowers attacking like piranhas and blocking the way. Desu considers leaving it all to Hannah's aim. She's excellent, but Kay knows time is against them. Even so, he admits bullets should be enough. In theory, Han isn't fully sure either. Last time she had the advantage because of a strong potion, so she hopes he has another one. Kay says he does. She waits eagerly, but he doesn't hand it over, which annoys her. Kay has a simple reason: he needs the experience, so he charges in alone, moving like a human lawnmower, cutting through stems, leaves, and thorns that fly everywhere, clearing the whole field with raw power. Han can only complain and stare, unable to understand what he's seeing. Desu sums it up simply: this guy is Kay. Even then Han refuses to accept it, telling himself Kay must have hidden his level or has some broken skill. Kay doesn't stop, he gathers all his strength and with one brutal slash he splits the Plant King clean in two. His teammates watch in, or while Han just freezes, like what he saw crushed his pride. Kay keeps leveling up, then gets the King's Flower and the Thornwing Glove. After leaving the dungeon he keeps reading its details. It seems to be made from the Plant King's body. Its biggest weakness is fire and its main use is simple: a sharp blade on the back of the glove for emergencies. That's useful for someone who can fight with more than one weapon, now that he has all the items and skills from the tutorial. He starts thinking it'll soon be easy to clear the D-rank dungeon. And even though Han is still struggling to believe he's really Kay, the shock should keep him quiet for a while. As they head back, Hannah raises her rifle and tells everyone to stop when she spots something right ahead. What they find looks like the aftermath of a brutal fight. Goshu starts searching the area, hoping maybe someone made it out alive. He's worried something happened at the camp, so the whole group runs straight to the facility. At first it seems completely deserted, until Kay spots footprints that make no sense at all. They go back and forth like the people who made them were walking in circles. Daishu calls out for anyone still alive, but no one answers. Kay figures this has to be tied to the original dungeon, and Hannah can't understand how, since they already destroyed what was spreading the virus. This time K has no answer. Then, in the distance they hear a scream and rush toward it. There, they find a survivor pinned under the rubble. After pulling him free, K tries using a healing potion, but the wounds are too severe, his nerves are completely destroyed, and only a resurrection potion could save him now, which they don't have. Even so, K gives him one to ease the pain, hoping he can at least explain what happened. Once he's a little steadier, the man starts telling them everything. It began with a huge monster appearing near the stairs, forcing an evacuation, but the real nightmare started after that, when their own people began turning into zombies and attacking each other. A lot of them died. Just remembering it makes the man panic, struggling to breathe, barely getting the words out. He says some people managed to escape, and before fading completely, he adds that one of them turned into something even worse, a monster. K hears that and links it to the third stage of dungeon infection. It starts with mild symptoms, then comes the zombie stage, but turning into a monster shouldn't happen in a single day. Something is wrong, and K starts thinking someone forced the process. Meanwhile, the survivor is officially dead according to the system, but before his eyes close for the last time, he begs them to save the others, and then he falls silent forever. Later, Hannah finishes off the nearby zombies and asks the protagonist if there was any way to save them. K doesn't answer that. He follows their tracks to the rails and everything points to the survivors taking the same route, so they move on hoping to find them alive. Daisu gets that there's no other choice. If more appear, they'll have to kill every last one. K handles that without much trouble. They keep following the tracks until they reach a station the protagonist didn't even know existed. Someone explains that it's a ghost station, part of a line cancelled years ago. Basically a forgotten place. There they find more strange traces, and Daisu says they probably know where this is heading, though he warns everyone to be ready to run if things go bad. As they move through a tunnel so dark they can barely see, K senses something deeper inside. He takes the lead, raises his sword and charges at full speed when he sees skeletal hands reaching out. His strike lands, forcing the monster back as it starts to come out of the darkness. With the protagonist in front, Daisu moves behind him and gets the rearguard ready in case a whole horde shows up. Then everyone freezes when they recognize the clothes of one of their friends. K immediately warns them not to let their guard down. There's nothing human left in her now. She's just another monster, and that's the worst part of the virus. It turns friends into enemies. He saw this happen in the game and plenty of players died because of it. But this isn't a game, so he decides to end it fast and spare her any suffering. The creature lunges at him and his first stab bounces off its hardened arm, its strongest defense. This time though he doesn't back away. He blocks the next hit, spins cleanly and slices off the weaker arms. The creature answers with a disgusting attack, whipping out a stretchy arm from its mouth like a lash. Daisu tries to step in but K stops him. An enemy like this is too much for him. So K moves fast, jumps over the monster and maneuvers into place searching for the core. He finds it in the neck, drops down with the blade ready and finishes the fight without hesitation in one clean slash. The body hits the ground and K realizes that in this form it had the strength of a lower D-class boss. If they keep leveling this fast, soon he'll handle threats like that with ease. Even so, he knows that even at level 100 they'd still be below far stronger players. Sooner or later they'll have to face them, just not now. Then Daisu warns that something is coming, a massive horde of mutated humans rushing toward them. That almost scares Daisu out of his mind, but K knows what they are. Third-generation dungeon soldiers called the Greedy Ones, mutated humans. In a situation like this he'd rather just think of them as monsters. Still, Hannah doesn't waste time on labels because enemies are dropping from above, crawling up from below and moving through every part of the tunnel, leaving them completely surrounded. Daisu starts wondering if they can really make it to the ghost station, but K doesn't stop to think about it much. He's ready to fight, so everyone draws their weapons. They have no other choice but to go all out. After several minutes of fighting, Hannah manages to slash one of the mutants. Thinking he dropped it, he gets careless, but the creature jumps back up and goes straight for his head. K has to step in and save him again. As the bodies pile up around them, he asks Hannah if she's absolutely sure the others went to the ghost station. She says yes, it's wide, has supplies, and it's the best place to hold out. So K decides they need to push that way. Hannah doesn't like the plan because she can feel too many presences moving nearby. Daisu comes closer trying to figure out what K is planning, but K doesn't explain. Instead he charges ahead and cuts down the monsters behind them, opening a path. He signals that he'll explain while they move, but no one is to leave his side. As they keep going through the tunnels, he tells them about the Greedy Ones, humans turned into monsters by dungeon infection, mutating into all kinds of forms. They can have wings or too many arms and legs or giant overbuilt bodies. What makes them dangerous is that they keep evolving based on the desires they had as humans. So to fight them, you need to figure out those desires. He guesses the giant eye one was probably a peeper, or maybe someone who lost his sight or never saw well to begin with. Either way, what matters now is killing the huge eye. When it attacks, K easily dodges by leaping aside, then flashes it with a skill, leaving it completely blind. He comes down with his sword aimed straight at the eye, making it clear that these monsters are only weak at the point tied to their desire. The problem is he puts so much force into the hit that he ends up shattering his sword. Daisu offers his spear, but Kei has other weapons and doesn't think the officer should be left unarmed, something Daisu had completely forgotten, so Kei takes the chance to test the Kakashi gloves. They don't reach as far as a sword, but they still hit hard. He jumps back into the fight, grabs a monster, slams it into the wall and crushes its face in one punch. It's clearly a powerful weapon. That leaves Daisu shaken, not because of the strength but because the monster's clothes make him realize that less than a day ago it was just a kind 10-year-old boy. He can only hope they aren't aware anymore. Even so, they keep moving. The protagonist activates Raiwan, then stops to warn his teammates that they're entering the territory of the thing he mentioned before, an activator, a level 3.5 or 4 dungeon soldier, strong enough to scare even the monsters that were following them. It's likely the reason the infection got worse in everyone, and Kei thinks it was fed a dungeon flower which let it evolve this far and spread that change to the others. If it keeps evolving at this rate, it could devour all of souls as they move through a slimy dark tunnel. They run into something huge. Daisu notices something and tries to move ahead, but Hana stops him, knowing he wants to save the poor man trapped in the monster's hands, but the creature gives him no chance. With one motion it bites off the man's head and drops him with the rest of the bodies. Then the beast speaks, saying it won't apologize and telling them to die. Its size is enormous and Kei sees remains everywhere, the parts the creature didn't eat. It's so savage that even the air smells like blood. Kei hates seeing how many people it killed and figures it must be a trigger. Daisu doesn't know what that means, and honestly the protagonist doesn't fully know either. He only knows it's a monster that changes according to its desires. After eating a dungeon flower, turning into a brutal creature like the one in front of them, its exact abilities stay unknown until they fight it. Hana says the battle in the city plus what the survivor told them seems to confirm that someone let the trigger in disguised as one of their own. Judging by the result, huge power but poor speed, she sees it as a mid-ranked boss around level 100, but Dreamside isn't a game where level means everything. A level 40 fighter could still crush a level 100 monster. Still, that sharply lowers their chances of winning because creatures like this can become far stronger. Just like the one in front of them, a beast built on pure brute force. Then it activates its power, releasing a violent shockwave that shakes the entire area. The group falls back. Kei notices something in its voice, and so do Daisu and Hana. They confirm it when they recognize the tone. It belongs to Choi Man-hee, the same loud famous streamer Han remembers from the start of the chaos. Not only did he survive, he kept going with his over-the-top streaming life, and he pushed that way too far when he turned a food challenge into something so sick it got him thrown in prison and sentenced to death for eating real human flesh on stream. Since then he's been known as a complete maniac. Now it looks like he escaped with the other prisoners and ended up like this. Still, everyone agrees on one thing. He was already a monster before becoming a trigger. Now he's just uglier and even crazier. The monster even tells them to share the video as hands start bursting out all over its body. The group can only stare in shock as hundreds of arms lash out. Kei twists away just in time, and Han nearly gets grabbed if not for Daisu stepping in. Even he can tell this thing is way beyond him, but he still holds his ground and warns everyone to watch the arms. Then while Kei tries to push forward, he almost steps on a piece of the monster. It turns into a slimy mass and starts rebuilding itself into something like an arm, then multiplies and spreads. Everyone runs and Daisu tries to draw its attention. Making the arms rush toward him, he snaps his spear forward, piercing through the swarm of limbs straight at the monster. That gives Kei his opening. He appears right behind it and lands a hit, but it barely slows the monster down. It keeps moving, rambling nonsense, and everyone starts thinking those words are memories from some old murder. While they search for a way to hurt the twisted creature, it suddenly senses the tastiest meat there. The idol and lunges straight at Hana. She just smiles. This isn't the first disgusting monster that tried to put its hands on her. She answers with a gunshot, but no matter how many rounds she fires, the bullets do absolutely nothing. Kita backs her up, but he quickly realizes that with the monster freshly fed and still powered up, taking a head-on is a bad move. For now they just have to hold out any way they can. As they do, Kita puts together a plan, and he already knows what to do. He moves in with Hana, who plays her part by drawing the monster's attention. She lands a strong shot into its cheek while Kita follows with a brutal barehanded strike. At first it doesn't look like it did much, but something starts to change when the spotty hit begins to rot away, and then the monster's arm starts bleeding for no reason. A few seconds later, the creature screams in pain as its arm seems to be eaten away from the inside. Everyone is left staring in surprise, but Kei only confirms that his plan is working, and that confidence spreads to the others. Still, the rotting monster just starts laughing like a maniac. It throws a heavy punch, and the protagonist blocks it easily. Watching that, Dasso realizes they really can win if this keeps up. Kei tells them that yes, they can hurt it, but the fight is far from over. He has a plan, and he needs both of them for it. Apparently, he also needs Han, who now stands there trying to look brave while completely terrified by the giant creature. Then he starts mocking its weight, calling it a pig, a dragon pig. basically, which somehow hurts that thing's feelings. The monster snaps back by opening its huge mouth and charging while Han does everything he can not to cry as it rushes him, but at the last second K appears and holds its mouth open. Right then Daisu gives the signal and Han aims straight into the open cavity and fires. The shot sinks deep into the creature's body and suddenly something starts glowing inside it with light spreading through its veins. Pan is stunned that the plan is actually working. He remembers how just minutes ago K gathered them together and explained that while they distracted the beast he would spend all the points he had saved to push one stat all the way to the limit. Magic power, so he'd have enough for the next step. Now he focuses to activate concentrated magic, knowing that if the enemy is absurdly strong, then he has to hit even harder. The beast answers by forming a disgusting web of arms ready to crush him. K takes off and tears through everything in his way, heading straight for the monster, which still seems obsessed with its likes. The protagonist leaps with everything he's got, ready to give it one last like and unsubscribe it from life. The impact shatters its jaw and the blast shakes the whole place. The monster crashes down and the system confirms the kill, giving them experience and on top of that Wang's ring, so they gather around the burned body of the insane former streamer on the floor, confirming it really was Mangui. But K doesn't care about that. What matters to him is who set all this up and why. That question keeps spinning in his head, and then he notices something. Around the ex-streamer's neck there's a strange symbol. Meanwhile, far away, a hooded man watches the result of the battle through a red crystal ball. He can't believe someone who controlled the best farms in Seoul ended up losing to some random guy and starts thinking only one person he knows could have done that. But then he's interrupted by someone calling him Bei-hin and complaining that he's acting too busy. It's Kang Mi from the company, and he thinks Bei-hin is wasting time. Both of them belong to the company, a dark force in Dreamside, a point-based group that will do anything to grow stronger, known like a plague across the continent. Their mark is a lightning bolt piercing 2 moons, and they all wear it around their necks. Bei-hin looks happy that Minute showed up at just the right moment, but Minute first tells him he thinks K survived the tutorial. Though he still can't be sure because nobody gets out of hell difficulty, Bei-hin immediately understands what that means and says they need to track his location because he thinks he finally found him. At the same time, K's group keeps moving through the tunnels, while Bei-hin remembers how K casually crushed a solo dungeon full of high-level monsters, even though somehow a Krak managed to keep his data safe enough to predict what would happen on Earth. What he never expected was K surviving. Pan tells him not to get carried away. Even if it is K, right now he's just a newbie fresh out of the tutorial. That's why they need to report this to management. Because if he's right, K must be eliminated at once. Elsewhere in the tunnels, a survivor is running as fast as he can, desperate with a horde of monsters right behind him. Not only do they never get tired, there are even more of them than before. He fears he'll die before he ever finds Daisu. Then in panic, he spots a light at the end of the tunnel. It makes no sense. There's no power in the city, so a full train shouldn't be running. Especially not in a ghost station. He doesn't trust it, but whatever is chasing him gives him no time to think. So without stopping to question it, he sprints for the light, which clearly feels like something tied to the system. He gets inside just as the doors slam shut, and the monsters crash into the metal, some of them clinging to the train as it starts moving. For a second Heebwan thinks he got lucky, and hopes it will take him to the detective station. Then the system crushes that hope, when it announces his arrival in the D-Class themed dungeon, Ghost Train. The rule is simple. An attendant checks the passenger's ticket, and anyone without one dies. Meanwhile, Kaya keeps going toward the station, and Han finally accepts that this really is Ki. He even remembers how much of a fanboy he became when he saw him finish that monster with one punch. He's so overexcited, it almost looks like he's starting to fall for him, with such a weird expression that it makes Hannah uncomfortable. Daisu meanwhile starts losing hope and thinks it's already too late to find more survivors. Cape doesn't agree, not because he's hopeful, but because it makes sense. He knows evolved monsters don't act without a plan. They let some people escape so those people lead them to other hiding spots. That's why they create a tiger. These creatures don't stay the same, they evolve. And if no one stops them, everyone could end up becoming one. The whole idea disgusts him, especially if the company is behind it. A group of NPC advisors that chose to play for the evil side by making quests and recruiting players, growing stronger until someone finally stopped them. And that someone was Cape Chai. He remembers how destroying the dungeons those companies worked so hard to build always gave him a strange sense of relief. Back in the game they were a huge problem. But now this isn't a game and he can't help wondering if it's the same company moving the pieces again. Then Daisu says they've reached the station and it really lives up to its ghost name because nobody is there. Even though this was marked as the evacuation point, Daisu had even left supplies there for civilians and Ki praises him because those will come in handy. The inventory isn't unlimited. Still the officer clings to one detail. Someone took part of the supplies. That means at some point somebody made it there alive. Kai, however, is stuck on something else. He doesn't get why more people didn't become players, even just for the chance to enter the tutorial and fight for themselves. Hannah explains the truth. Without internet there's no link. and only people with special terminals like her watch can interact with the system. Even then it's only certain functions and only if they're already players. So it isn't simple. No one can become a player unless they go to the Ark. Kai doesn't know what that is, and Hannah explains that she's been there a couple of times. It's the last military base left in Seoul, and apparently the only place that still has power. Meanwhile, at the station entrance, a pile of dead monsters lies at the feet of a strange group of players apparently sent by Baehin. They're led by Byung from Team Farino, 3 of the company, and they notice a train arriving and announcing its next stop. It's the same one Higuan boarded, which isn't supposed to be there. One of the underlings suggests getting on it to move faster and intercept their targets, but Byung makes it clear that if they board they'll die. He knows that dungeon well, and even as a D-class one it's too much for them. Byung remembers that he only works there because he wants to stay alive, and though his subordinates want to force the mission. Their leader makes it clear they're not getting on. Most likely the goblins will deal with the targets. Back with the protagonist, he notices how biblical the name of Seoul's last base sounds. Apparently that's where Hannah and the group were really planning to go to use their terminals. So they decide to change course. The protagonist thinks it's a good idea since the survivors may have gone there too. With Disu and Han ready to keep searching, Kei is about to move, then suddenly stops when he feels a tickle on his ass. Then Kei feels a twitch in his pocket. Goran picked up something nearby. To him it smells like food. He starts tracking it through the station, pointing them in one direction. Kei looks that way and feels a huge wave of energy coming from one exact spot. That tells him right away they're not alone. With Goran leading by scent, he guides Kei by the hair like it's Ratatouille. Hannah figures whoever this is must be running from something, and Disu worries they may have left someone behind. But Kei tells them to keep moving. If they can hear footsteps that clearly, it means they're human. So this isn't just some lost survivor. As they push forward, Kei gets a bad feeling. This path looks like a trap. Even so, they keep going and reach an empty station. Han starts to complain, but before he can finish, an arrow cuts through the air straight at his face. Kei catches it at the last second. Han freezes, then thanks him with tears in his eyes while Kei drops the arrow. He looks around confused about when the place got filled with smoke. It's so thick he can barely make out shapes, but those silhouettes are the ones firing. Arrows start coming from every side and the group has to dodge carefully. Disu manages to, barely, and one heads right for Hannah, making everyone tense up until she fires and blows the arrow apart mid-air. That makes it clear she can handle herself. Hannah locks eyes with Ki, and without a word he rushes ahead through the storm of shots, dodging on pure instinct until he finds where they're coming from. Kayaki reaches at first, throwing a brutal punch that clears the smoke in one blast and reveals the attacker a kobold. Kayaki first thinks it's a dungeon break, but then another idea hits him, so he tells Hannah not to shoot too late, because she already pulled the trigger. Luckily she shifts the shot at the last second so it only hits the arm, not knowing why he stopped her. Still, Hannah trusts that if Kayak said it, he had a reason. He quickly explains that this ugly little guy isn't a monster, he's a person. Just like the many kobolds surrounding them, right then, a more scholarly-looking little creature shows up, shocked that they aren't workers. Everyone is stunned because that thing can talk. It steps forward and introduces itself as Shin Hayu, saying in a strange accent that they aren't monsters. Daisu leans over and whispers to Kei that something that ugly still looks like a monster to him, so Kei uses a simple test. He checks the color of their names in the system. No real monster can have a white name, so he's sure they're all players. That still leaves one big question. Why did they attack first? The kobolds nervously apologize. They were scared and thought this group was one of those cursed workers. Then they explain how it all started. The Daydream site opened a new area called the Land. It caught a nerdy four-eyed kid off guard, and with no clue what was happening, he had to survive. After getting his first weapon, a rough sword, he knew there was no time to complain. He had to adapt. The boy remembers this used to be his favorite game before he joined the army. He proudly reached level 200 and had tons of items he could have claimed if he'd noticed the server shut down. But he was serving at the time. Even so, he kept enough skill to survive, so he headed to the option maze and helped the survivors from Jian Station. Making it through the normal stage as the only one who cleared that level, that made him the leader and the one everyone looked to, even though he wasn't some high-ranking guy, which only made surviving harder. Then strange merchants appeared. They acted friendly at first, giving them weapons and food to stay alive. Only later did he realize it was a terrible mistake. Back then it felt like a lifesaver, but things got ugly fast when they signed a contract and got cheated with dirty tricks. Everyone remembers the food was drugged, and when they couldn't pay it back, the collectors took their bodies. The memory still makes them furious. Their bodies were stolen and their souls were trapped inside kobolds. But that was only the start, because the collectors kept coming every week for interest, taking the only thing left, their memories. Now Kei understands why some of them can't even talk anymore. He asks if anyone besides collectors ever came through here, hoping his people didn't hurt them. He also wants to know how much interest they're being charged. Before they can answer, the collectors show up, a group of goblin-like creatures. Everyone hides at once. and Hannah looks at Kay and sees something is really bothering him. He doesn't deny it, after hearing all that. He's furious, but he's confused too. In theory, they should all owe the same amount, yet they're not all in the same state. Some kobolds can't talk at all, while others still remember things. Hannah starts putting it together and Kay finishes the thought. Unlike their leader Shine, who's 23, the ones who've lost almost all their memories are probably children. That explains why Shin is so desperate. He knows that every payment takes more of them away until nothing is left, just empty monsters. Hannah grits her teeth as she watches the collectors move through the smoke, searching for the small debtors. One collector slams hard into a hiding spot, sending several kobolds flying. The others try to fight back with arrows, but the goblin blocks them with ease, so the little ones switch to something stronger. Grenades. The blast fills the area, and for a moment the young kobolds cheer, thinking they won. Then the collector walks out of the smoke, grabs one by the head and makes one thing clear. Debts get paid. He squeezes until the kid's head bursts right in front of everyone, then lets the body drop while tasting the blood, driving the message home. They must pay. The creature enjoys their fear until it picks its next target. Before it can reach them, Ka steps in. The collector barely realizes what's happening. Before K cuts it down in one strike, another appears behind him. But a quick flash takes their head off too. Jacob gives a quick thanks, then looks toward another collector, recognizing it as a level 80 goblin who technically counts as human. It tells him to stay out of its business. But K sees nothing in it that deserves to be called human. He moves fast and slams it hard into the ground. Lying there, the goblin begs for mercy, saying it only followed its brother. K doesn't care and hurls debris straight into its face, because he knows a creature at that rank had to kill and eat its own parents. Someone like that gets no pity. Then another attack comes. K blocks it and realizes he may have found his new hate pyros. He activates Rhea to check the enemy's energy, and once he sees it, he knows what to do. He tells the others to get back while he builds speed and charges the monster, fist ready. Using all that momentum, he goes straight for the monster's face. It waits way too confident, never seeing K at the last second release his blade and drive it right into its head, killing it on the spot and even gaining a level. The contract drops to the floor and K picks it up to read it. By the first 2 lines it's already wildly illegal, so he figures they were tricked by some kind of skill. Even so, he hates that they went along with it. The others finally regroup after killing the rest of the monsters there. Then their bodies suddenly start glowing, and some kind of essence begins to pour out. Jacob guesses those are the player's souls, but things get worse when the kobolds cry out in pain because the same thing is happening to them. Nobody knows what to do, so they ask K, but all he can find is that the contract had another clause. After some time, all the player's souls would merge into one, and that's exactly what's happening now. As all that essence gathers into one place and forms an orb, it shoots past them and K orders everyone to follow, afraid that if they don't move fast, everyone will be in danger. But before they can catch it, they run into the train from Station 10. Jacob confused about why it's here, so he walks up carefully, at least until Goran jumps out of his bag, totally excited because he thinks he's finally about to eat. Jacob smiles when the train doors open, inviting them in. He knows what this means. They're entering a dungeon. Before stepping inside, Kay remembers Dreamside. One of its best parts was the dungeons, and they came in all kinds, even moving ones like ships or cars. And now a train. The thought hits him with a wave of nostalgia, but Hannah breaks it by pointing out the huge amount of energy coming from the train door. Day 2 asks what he plans to do now, and Kay says that if they enter the dungeon, they may never find survivors from Manhwa Station. But the officer already sounds resigned because Kay made it clear no one else had arrived, and it wouldn't make sense for anyone to reach another station without passing through this one. Chasing that hope now feels pointless when there's a small group of young people among these kobolds who need help. Chaga asks if he's ready because then they're all going in. The system warns them that everyone is entering without a ticket. Meanwhile, inside the train, after running for what feels like forever, Higuan is somehow still alive, though he feels like he might collapse from exhaustion. He's trying to get a ticket for the train attendant, but first he has to keep chasing a tiny annoying baby goblin. He tries to fight them, but they're too fast and too irritating, so all he can do is dodge until one of them almost tears his head off. From the way they attack him, it doesn't even feel like a real fight. It feels like they're playing. That tiny mistake costs him because another mini goblin slams into his back, knocking him down and ruining his chance to get a ticket. Then the goblin attendant shows up and wastes no time, finishing him with a hit that takes him out and drags him through the train cars like luggage. When Higuan wakes up, he's dazed, and the first thing he sees is a human completely out of control trying to attack him. Then he notices the rest of them. Higuan looks around and finds a train car packed with chain people. Their eyes are empty and they move like puppets. He has no idea where he is or how he ended up there. Meanwhile, at the back of the train, the goblins stand around annoyed with no one left to mess with. Then the group shows up with Kay leading the way. He recognizes the little monsters right away. Even if they look small, he knows better than to take them lightly. They're strong and they're crazy hungry for humans. Hannah also points out something else. The train looks old, nothing like a modern one. It's more like an old coal train, and Kay gets it at once. This is a dungeon, a class 501. The higher the class, the more twisted the inside becomes, and he's seen that before, like that oversized middle school. On top of that, one look out the window tells him they're no longer on Earth. As soon as they get in, the mission starts right away. It's the same one Higuan got. Find a ticket before the conductor shows up and takes them away. Kay realizes this is a themed dungeon, so while he beats the mini-goblins down, he figures out they need to follow the dungeon's special rules. Luckily that's enough to get a ticket, and Hannah gets one too. The others get theirs just as easily. It all feels way too simple. But Kay doesn't need one. He already knows what that means. If they keep playing by the rules, this dungeon will take way too long, so he plans to speed things up by letting the conductor come after them. That's when the little goblins suddenly hide, confusing Hannah until he realizes it's because Kay has started calling for the huge conductor. The giant comes over and asks for his ticket, but Kay doesn't have one, so the conductor gets ready to give him a fast one-way trip. Before he can make his move, Kay sends him flying with a single punch, leaving the goblin flat on the floor, totally stunned. So it pulls out a weapon and tries to strike back, but Kay dodges with ease. He jumps over its head and drives a knee straight into its face, dropping it again. Then he comes down from above with a crushing punch that caves in its chest. A while later, the goblin wakes up. Kay is holding its head still, his glove aimed at its brain, asking if it's the only one working there. The goblin barely understands anything. Kimmy repeats the question and makes it very clear he wants an answer fast. While the others watch, reminded that he's weirdly good at acting like a villain, he keeps reading the mission out loud to the attendant, still doubting this goblin is the final boss. He wants the truth. But the goblin tries to resist. A few threats from Kay quickly turn it meek again, and a little too charmed by him, Kay sits on top of it and asks where the souls were taken. The goblin refuses to talk, but Kay kindly persuades it by aiming at its liver. Panicking, the goblin swears it's telling the truth and says they were sent to Area D. It begs for its life and claims that's all it knows, leading to a full torture show that scares the mini-goblins too. In the end, Kay leaves it alive and asks for the key. The goblin keeps pretending it doesn't know anything, but Kay knows he can leave Area F whenever he wants, so the other zones should work the same way. The goblin tries to hide it, but Kay expected that. When it still refuses, he takes the key by force and gets the first hidden item. After knocking the goblin out, he's ready to move on, but his teammates still aren't fully okay with leaving it like that. They wonder if goblins might be players too, in other words victims. Kay shuts that down right away. Unlike kobolds, to become a goblin you first have to kill your own kind and then eat them. Everyone reacts at once, completely disgusted. That's more than enough for them to stop seeing goblins as human. They move through the first car, and as a reward for basically speedrunning the area they reach the next stage without much trouble. Still, Desu reminds him they're supposed to finish the missions to close the dungeon, and Kay explains that's just the normal route. What they don't know is there are lots of shortcuts, things like Easter eggs or hacks. He warns them they'll need tricks like that a lot, especially if they want to keep up with someone who's about to break the power scale. With it, they reach the train's safe zone, the guest room. As soon as they step in, they find a man calmly eating dinner like nothing is wrong, while on the other side of the car a group of chained people scream without stopping. That's enough for Kay to guess these are the merchants. Their leader is a human named Song, and he demands their ticket. Kay steps forward without backing down and says he has a very good ticket. The merchant gets angry at the attitude, and the two square off until Kay suddenly complains about the heat, which leaves his friends totally lost. Song is shocked that Kay knows the code, so he tells them to follow him. Desu quietly tells Hannah to stay ready for anything, but instead of attacking, the man leads them to a table stacked with food so they can recover from their trip. That only confuses those two even more. Soon they're all sitting at the same table while the man introduces himself as Song. He and his partner Kang are traveling merchants. Kay acts happy to meet him while Desu tries to figure out what he's doing. Apparently Kay found more than keys in the attendant's pockets. When Song asks why they're whispering, Kay tells Hannah that the station's secret code is actually "it's not hot today." He also realizes that just chasing the souls won't help if they don't find a way to return them to their bodies. Luckily, the merchants get distracted asking the uncomfortable idol for autographs while Kay plans to get information about how the contracts work. It won't be easy though, because all of a sudden a lot more goblins show up and surround them without knowing the group already noticed. Song laughs and says Kay did guess the code right, but that was last month's code. Kay complains that they're way too suspicious as he frees his gloves. Song orders the monsters to kill him, and that starts the fight. The group makes quick work of the goblins. Now the merchants, terrified, try to run, but Desu is already blocking their way. A few think they can beat him, but the officer puts them down in the end. He makes sure to leave them alive so Kay can use his interrogation skills, hoping this time he won't need to use his nicer methods. Song still isn't scared. He's sure they can't handle Lord Hack, and Kay reacts the moment he hears that name. Song takes that as fear of their leader, the rookie Sky. Lord Hack, but Kay just bursts out laughing while his friends as usual are completely lost. Kay remembers that petty thief very well. He thinks back to Jack, someone who reached the top without being a fighter. He was known as a cruel loan shark. You didn't want to cross, but also someone you could rely on. His deals and items were always guaranteed. He had the best goods in the world, showed up when needed and vanished right after. Earning the title Mirage, he charged a ton even for delivery, but the worst part is that he tricked Kay out of several items through shady deals. Still, Kay is glad he's alive so he can make him pay back. Song can't say anything else because he suddenly starts foaming at the mouth and drops to the floor. From there his soul starts getting ripped out just like the other merchants. They all twist in pain as their souls are pulled free. Like with the kobolds, everyone is shocked that Jack could be this cruel to his own people. Hannah thinks maybe he got worse once everything became real, and still doesn't really know who he is, so Hannah calls him a thief. She got scammed by him too. Kay figures he probably cheated every ranker. Still, they won't blame him for everything just yet, though Hannah definitely wants a little payback if they find him. After freeing all the chained humans, Kay notices something strange. One person isn't tied up, instead is wearing a level 300 angel collar, a super rare item with only one copy in existence, and it belongs to none other than Jack himself. He's right there greeting them like a happy cat while flat out denying that he's Jack. Kay clearly sees the angel earrings too, but Jack insists they're fake until a shot nearly takes his arm off. It's Hannah, fully fed up with his jokes, aiming her weapon straight at the head of the man she thinks caused all this. He drops to his knees and begs for forgiveness. Like a scolded kid, he apologizes for scamming the rankers, saying he thought the server was just going to shut down. He admits he's Jack, whose real name is Hazan. Kay says the old scam doesn't matter anymore, but what he did in the real world does. Jack keeps apologizing to Kay, who immediately steps in looking threatening because he has no idea how Jack knows his name. After a while, Jack explains that he came to this train to find his imposter, though that's only part of the truth. He admits he's actually been tracking Kay the whole time with GPS devices. He got as a bonus when the server shut down. That completely destroys Kay's privacy, and the merchant clearly sees him as a huge pile of money. While those two argue like kids, Desu and Hans stare in shock after learning Jack is actually just a 14-year-old boy. Then the kid walks up to Hannah saying he's always been a fan and hoping she remembers him from conventions. She's surprised he knows who she is and remembers him as a nice fan. She never would have guessed he was Jack until he ruins that good image by saying he always thought Clark was an overweight old lady. So Hannah punishes his cheeks while Kay tries to understand what Jack said about an imposter. Barely able to talk, Jack explains he only found out about that imposter recently. He says that while searching for Kay around Seoul, he ran into some strange merchants who mentioned his name. So he looked into their contracts and quickly saw how shady they were. That's why he decided to follow them and find out who was stealing his name. That's when he overheard Song talking about going to Jack's auction. Everyone is shocked to hear that because apparently in Section D5 a newly opened black market is holding an auction for rare items. Kay guesses that's where they're taking those soulless people, and Jack says is right. He remembers that when he took down the merchants he got no rewards even though they were red players because they never actually died. They didn't really die, their souls were moved into empty bodies and sold off like extra lives, and all of it was set up by the so-called Goblin Master and Jack's fake. Hannah can't get over that weird title, and Jack explains the goblins have a strict ranking system. It works like a pyramid with Li Kang at the very top. He's the one every goblin answers to. He decides that if this guy is behind it, he'll go with Desu and Hannah into the next section. Before they move, Jack suggests taking a shortcut that leads them onto the train roof where they're suddenly trying not to die. King sees nothing useful about this route, but Jack swears it's faster and says it leads straight to the car with the black market so they can dig up answers. The protagonist is surprised to learn a new trick, but that feeling vanishes when the system marks the roof as a hidden section and sends out the blinders, so he snaps at Jack. Wasn't this supposed to be safe? Then again, Jack isn't exactly trustworthy. Now they have to deal with specters diving past them and throwing everyone off balance. Even Kay realizes this fight could get ugly. He activates his gloves while dodging scythe slashes, and Jack reminds him that normal hits won't work on ghosts, but Kang already has a backup plan. He uses magic concentration to load mana into his fist, then smashes a spectre apart. Jack likes what he sees. He's right beside Kang using camouflage so well he's almost impossible to notice, though he still warns him not to get careless with specters. Kay thinks they're easy targets, even as more start appearing, but Jack warns him the specters aren't the real problem. The real danger comes after they kill too many and wake up their mother, the boss Banshee. That only makes Kay grin. He thanks Jack for the shortcut because now he has a plan. While Hannah keeps firing, she lines up a shot on an especially nasty one, aiming straight for its head, but before the bullet lands, Kay stops her, which instantly annoys Hannah. Kay-Chell tells her to stop killing specters, and everyone else is just as confused by the sudden change. Kang explains that if they wipe out too many they'll wake the Banshee, and they can't beat a Banshee. What they can do is use one. That leaves everyone as confused as I am, and after a long while Hans starts getting tired of doing nothing but running. Desu tells him to move faster because they're still being chased, and Han remembers when Kale gave him the job of acting as bait with Desu. He already regrets it now that he knows how many are after them and is starting to hate his idol a little. Meanwhile, in another car someone is watching a fight. It's the fake Jack who just lost because a high-ranking goblin interrupted. He glares at the goblin in disgust, but the goblin still asks for confirmation. The fake Jack answers by throwing wine in his face. The insult enrages the goblin, but he still can't do a thing because of the omnipresent helmet, the item that lets Jack control all the goblins. So the goblin has no choice but to kneel, and the imposter finally asks for his report. The goblin says Goblin Station was attacked, which confuses the imposter since he had strong men there. Then Leeka tells him to look at the screen where Kale is shown easily taking down the goblin conductor, someone who was supposed to be too strong for ordinary players from Seoul. The fake Jack starts thinking about what to do, but his scheming side loses to his creepy one when he ignores everyone else and focuses only on Hannah. He practically falls for her on the spot, then orders his men to capture the intruders but bring only Hannah back alive. Back in Car 6, the three move ahead calmly, though Hannah is still worried about the bait team. King figures Han's defense and the detective's training should be enough to keep them alive. For now they've reached the place where the world's greed is sold, the black market. Jack warns them though that masks are required to get in, and he only prepared one. Hannah hates the idea of risking everything with only one of them able to enter, but Jack says he already has a way around that. He hands Kale the invisibility cloak so he can sneak in. There's still one step short, but Jack insists he's already handled that too. So Phase 1 begins inside Car 5's casino, where everyone is gambling and making bets. Right then the people there suddenly feel like ghosts are all around them, when in fact it's just King moving around and investigating. He has to admit the dungeon is way bigger inside than he expected, and he has no clue where to start until Luck shows up as a suspicious little red devil heading straight for a strange door. Without overthinking it, Kang picks that as his first lead. At the same time he keeps sprinting with Desu, impressed by his stamina. Desu answers that he won't fail a mission from Kale, and they keep racing through the train cars, wondering if the others are doing okay on their end. Elsewhere, Jack wearing a mask walks beside Hannah. She seriously doubts this plan will work, but Jack tells her to trust him. At the very least she wants a backup plan, which Jack chooses to ignore. Then they arrive just as a red goblin stops them and asks the kid if he's a merchant. Jack says yes and claims he brought a very fine product. Hannah, she's furious but has to stick to the plan. Her idol-level smile makes the goblin recognize her as the girl his boss asked for, so he tells them to come somewhere more private. Jack agrees without noticing they're being watched by a mysterious panda. Meanwhile, King heads down into what looks like a holding cell for merchandise thanks to Jack's useful outfit, and admits he never expected to see a goblin run auction, but he has to turn invisible again because someone's coming. A goblin dragging another contract victim. Kang instantly recognizes him as Higuan. Badly shaken, he still has his own body, but his face makes it obvious he's not mentally okay. Kang wants to save him, but he can't do it yet. He quietly apologizes to Desu and decides he first needs information. Soon another goblin appears and MC spots his chance. Without wasting a second, he jumps the unsuspecting goblin, lands a brutal hit while Jack and Hannah keep following their goblin guide. Hannah worries about where they're being taken and Jack guesses it's the auction. Instead, the goblins lead them to a door and tell them to go in. Inside they find Enquentra, the imposter backed up by Lee Kun, the third highest goblin in the hierarchy, but Jack only cares about his annoying fake who gets excited seeing idle Hannah there while wearing the goblin hat, the item that makes all the goblins obey him and one Jack thinks he's using terribly. He doesn't have time to argue though because the imposter remembers he asked for Hannah alone and tells Lee Kun to deal with the dwarf. So Jack quickly pulls out his merchant skills and starts to negotiate, saying that's exactly why he's here. The imposter goes along with it and offers the real merchant a drink, which Jack accepts without hesitation, so the two share some wine, though the imposter can tell Jack doesn't fully trust it. Even so, what he really wants to know is what kind of deal this merchant is offering. Jack says his client wants an exclusive contract in exchange for huge amounts of high-quality goods. The imposter likes the sound of that but says he'll need a lot of money to make it happen. The real Jack then shows an account holding 10 million gold, which shocks Hannah. Still, the imposter says it's not enough. He wants more reason to trust this mysterious client, but Jack refuses to reveal the name, only saying it's the famous Ark. The imposter reacts like he knows exactly who that is. In truth, Jack was just bluffing and listens as the imposter orders him to prepare the paperwork right away. Jack is confused because it seems they've mistaken him for someone else the imposter was waiting for, so he decides to play along, but as soon as he finishes signing the contract, a bracelet clamps onto his arm. He stares at it confused while the imposter claims it's just a kind of insurance. Then he activates the two-face contract sealing Jack's body and inventory. It's all the work of the fake Jack, whose name weirdly enough sounds a lot like Jack, and he mocks him for falling into the trap, but Jack makes it clear he's not the only one with a trick ready that becomes obvious as chaos Starts crashing in, proving his side has arrived. The roof of the car is torn open by the Reapers, and one of them comes straight at Jack. Seeing the danger, he calls for his Lycan, who destroys it in a single hit that only boosts the imposter's confidence. He laughs at the failed plan and sends his own Lycan to wipe out everyone. The creature moves at incredible speed, crushing monsters and ordering the other goblins onto the intruders. One attacks right away, but Daisy bursts in and stops him. He asks Hannah if they missed anything, and she sees they arrive just in time. Furious, the fake Jack says they ruin his plan and activates the two-face contract, making the bracelet on Jack's wrist start to glow. Hannah tries to help him, but she doesn't need to. Nothing happens to him at all. Instead, the contract starts burning in the imposter's hands, and after scorching his fingers, he can only stare, totally confused, trying to figure out what just happened. Jack, on the other hand, has no idea either, which only makes the imposter even angrier. He starts suspecting there's something strange about Jack, but Jack knows that being exposed as a fake isn't what should worry him most. His luck and has just returned, and makes one dramatic entrance. It already wiped out all the specters, and that can mean only one thing: something stronger has appeared. The mother of the blinders, the banshee at the cells. The red goblin is barely still awake, while Kale pins him down and tells him to stop whining and answer if he doesn't want to lose another horn. First, he asks where the two-face contract is. The goblin says the boss has it. He immediately thinks of a Lycan, but the goblin corrects him. It's really Jack, and yes, that seems odd because no one would follow someone like him unless he was wearing the goblin hat, so the protagonist figures he probably got it as a reward for something. The server shutdown reward doesn't matter right now. What matters is where it is, so Kay keeps questioning the goblin until he finally points him to car 10. The goblin also admits he was tricked into becoming a goblin, and now he has no choice but to obey. Kay answers with a hard punch, making it clear he already knew that. Then he puts on the invisibility cloak without wasting another second. He rushes off. Meanwhile, in car B5, the banshee appears. Desu and Han tense up. They watch as it suddenly shuts its eyes, crying blood, then opens them again with a glow that unleashes its power. A ghostly wail bursts out, a twisted chorus of countless women and children crying at once. It sounds like the voices of its children, and it's terrifying. Still, no one can move yet because they need it as an ally and wait for Kang to strike. Soon the two monsters stand face to face. Jake sees no problem with it. He fully trusts his Lycan and orders it to attack, and it lunges in like a beast. With its first blow, the banshee barely dodges, but the shockwave is massive. Desu and the others raise shields to protect themselves. The other goblins aren't so lucky. They pass out from the pressure alone. Everyone knows they can't interfere in this fight unless KG gets there, so for now they have to leave it alone. The banshee mocks the so-called king's Lycan, which only makes it angrier. Just then more goblins show up to check on their boss, only to see him get blasted through the air. The two creatures clash brutally, and the shock of their fight wipes out nearby goblins. The banshee nearly takes the upper hand and corners it, but the Lycan breaks free. No matter how much it attacks, the banshee is faster, dodging and striking back even quicker, slowly taking control of the fight. That worries Jack, so he keeps pushing the Lycan through the hat's effect, forcing it to fight with everything it has for its king. Its rage rises, and in one fast move the Lycan finally catches the banshee by the neck and uses its strength to smash her into the ground. For a moment the banshee looks beaten, but in the next the chains tighten with such brutal force that her head explodes. The Lycan offers that sacrifice to its king, and the banshee is dead. Its gaze falls toward Hannah while the group gets ready to face the bloodthirsty Lycan, which now wants to kill them all. Hannah decides it's time to fill it with bullets, but everyone is shocked by the Lycan's regeneration. Her shots do nothing, and it's about to grab her when Kay appears like lightning, slicing off the Lycan's arm. Check then announces that his real client has finally arrived. Kay pulls Hannah to safety again, and the others cheer his arrival. Meanwhile, he looks over the situation and regrets that his plan to let the banshee distract the goblins failed. With her gone, he moves to the next step, charging in as he hands the invisibility cloak back to Jack. That starts the first real clash, and even with one arm the goblin still lands huge hits, so Day suggests they leave this to Kay while they go after the two-face contract, but Jack says he's already handled that. Then he pulls out of his inventory the exact same contract as before. Jack is stunned. He can't understand how Jack has it, and Jack explains that every deal involving him has to be fair, even with limits. The angel earrings send back every lion scam used against him, so Jack's trick contract ends up binding him instead and stealing his whole inventory. Jack still can't believe it, but he keeps trying to summon his slaves. The real Jack only smirks, already knowing how that control works, and tells him to at least check his head, because now Jack is the one wearing the hat that should make the answer obvious. Jack doesn't care. He keeps giving orders, and somehow the goblins still obey. Seeing things get worse, Han tells Jack to hurry up and put the hat on so he can control them. Jack says it won't work. The goblins here have their souls tied to their king, so they won't obey anyone else. That means it's time for Plan B, kill the Lycan, which is still coming with a huge blow that sends Kay flying into a wall, injured. The protagonist admits that someone of this rank is still too much for him right now. Jack reminds him they have the hat, so Kay changes tactics, dodging the monster to grab the banshee's spear and awaken its wails. Jack doesn't think that'll be enough, so he orders his Lycan to finish him once and for all obeys at once, rushing in at top speed toward K, who gets ready to take the hit, but there's not much he can do against the goblin's brutal strike. Is launched away with no way to stop himself before crashing into a bookshelf, still barely standing and badly hurt. He smiles when he sees his Rayton finally follow the path he planned back in the fight. K blocks the next hit with a Banshee scythe, but he still can't handle the weapon well, so he's sent flying. Again, barely on his feet, he realizes he can't fight a monster like this head-on using Rayton. He'll have to aim for his one real chance. Right as he's about to be attacked again, he tells Hannah to move and start firing the goblin, just like Jack thinks it's a waste of time, and Jack keeps yelling for it to finish them already, but right then Jack takes control of his body, forcing it to move in front of Hannah. The Lycan can't attack without hurting its king K, and Hannah used that opening to rush past at full speed. Jack is confused because they didn't even scratch him. Now left alone in front of the Lycan, he orders it to chase them, but it doesn't move right away. That annoys Jack, who keeps shouting, which starts to anger the goblin. K asks if he cut something. The contract chains he destroyed the bond linking them to Jack, and Jack still hasn't processed it when the Lycan grabs him by the head. Even though he orders it to let go, the creature only remembers how, despite swearing loyalty to the king since birth, following this man's orders always brought unbearable pain. It felt like a chained slave. Now it understands the truth. What stands before it is not a real king. Other goblins try to stop it, but it silences them with a few simple words. Jack keeps giving orders and gets a massive slap in return, sent flying hard before the Lycan finishes him with one crushing blow that tears him apart, freeing itself from that unworthy king. Then turns to K as its next target. K tells it to stop. There's no reason to fight now that he has the hat that controls them. The Lycan attacks anyway, but K counters by putting on the hat, tying the goblin's souls to him and chaining their choices again, which only enrages the goblin more. K even apologizes. He has nothing personal against it, but he has to stop it. Even so, the goblin's faith only grows, and so does its strength. Its eyes turn white and its body starts to twist. Hand can't understand why they still can't stop it, and K is just as confused when he sees that not even the hat can hold it back. Then they use Rayton and watch something spread through its whole body, turning it into a giant being. It unleashes a roar so powerful it sends bodies flying. The monsters and even some goblins still left alive. Then it plants itself like a beast in front of the group. Jack says it's exactly what he feared, though in the end he almost finds it funny. K is shocked too when he sees it even regenerated its arm in a second, but there's no time to think. He has to dodge the first claw strike. Jack tries to figure out its power, but K tells him to focus on escaping, though that's hard for him when he notices something strange in the Lycan's hands. Jack himself, somehow still alive, agonizing and cursing them. Just then a quake starts because of what's happening in what seems like a system bug trying to fix itself. They all need to get out, with Hannah carrying Han up onto the tops of the train cars. The giant goblin chases them all the way up there. K sees it as an overwhelming beast, something that could be the birth of the true Goblin King. Meanwhile, in the train storage area, two masked men, including the panda from earlier, loot every piece of luggage they can find. While no goblins are around, they belong to the National Intelligence Service. Kim, Gaxbo the raccoon, and John June soak the panda that they're trying to deal with the Ark crisis, so they plan to leave fast, but then their leader is called over by some of his men who show him that the storage area is also packed with people. Seeing them, the leader reacts with disgust, but he has no plans to help. He figures he can't carry everyone, so he decides to take only the food and get out, but that plan falls apart when the roof suddenly vanishes, revealing a huge monster that gives them no time to react before it slams the car with a massive hit, briefly taking its focus off K and the others. In that moment, K realizes what's happening. Its evolving Han is horrified, but K can't think of any other explanation. Dezu also doesn't understand how a boss can evolve outside a dungeon, but K knows it's basically the same as with players, except it should never happen. That's why it's a system error, something like a trigger from the look of it. The monster has already lost its mind, leaving only one instinct: get stronger. Han asks what they should do, but K calms her down. This isn't a full evolution, it's being forced by dungeon sickness caused by the Poja virus that only pushes one kind of evolution. In Dreamsight, they once tried using it to evolve monsters, but it only created strange failed attempts. K guesses that since this is version 2.0, they must have patched that part. Then he moves forward and activates Rion, seeing a strange energy coming from the giant goblin's neck, even when Young tells him to fall back because they can't beat something like this. But K still has one option. He uses his gloves and stabs his own hand, leaving everyone confused. Even so, he keeps going and puts on the Goblin King's hat that activates Chima Morio, and Jack is shocked that K knew about that trick as K wraps himself in a powerful ghost-like armor with a dark crown. Then he steps forward and faces the giant monster, knowing that if he wants to fight a beast like this, he has to use the hat's special power. The more souls it summons, the stronger it makes him, giving K a huge boost. Still, he feels awful fighting while covered in souls because some of them must belong to those poor kids. Even so, he has no choice, so he activates the Blade of Regret, a high-rank weapon that only works in this form because it's carried by the Dead to gaze, who can tell from his face that something is wrong, but K just tells him to stay back because their souls could be taken too. He launches himself forward, aware that this form is still taking goblin souls, and he knows forcing them to obey only works through a bond, one that won't last long, so he has to finish this fast. He rushes in at top speed trying to cut down the Goblin King, but even with all his strength he only manages to sever its arm again, while K's own arm shakes from the strain. Meanwhile, below them, Panda and Raccoon watch in shock, wondering if K is even human, but K has no time for them. He has to block the next attack. Then he notices them, and with a terrifying look makes it clear, leave now if you want to live. Even so, Panda manages to warn him that the monster is coming down with a crushing palm strike. K barely dodges, realizing the monster's hunger is aimed at the souls around him. That's why it attacks again right away, and K slips past it, easily confirming something important. At least the thing is fighting without a brain. He uses Araguana again and spots a faint light near the edge of its neck. That's the target. He bursts forward, dodging the monster's huge power, then uses the giant's own body as a platform to jump from. He reaches the king's arm, and from there he gathers his magic to tear into the neck with a storm of slashes, opening a deep wound. It starts to heal, but then a light comes out from inside, purple, shaped like a skull. K recognizes it as a dungeon flower and is stunned. He can't understand how anyone could plant a flower inside a monster. Worse, this isn't normal. It's a mutated one infected with a Poja virus that makes the company's role obvious, and now he finally knows what to strike, so he puts everything into a fast attack on the Goblin King's legs, bringing it down to its knees and putting the target within reach. K gathers his magic again for a thrust, but the flower stops him by forming a mass of thorns that attack at once. K blocks, then activates the Blade of Regret's unique skill, Ice Hole, freezing the spikes in place. Even so, he can't keep this transformation up much longer, especially while he keeps cutting through the whips protecting the flower. K admits he needs more power, but right then Hannah tells him to hold still. A massive blast flashes across the goblin's neck, fired by Hannah, and it hits the flower dead on, blowing it to pieces. But even after winning, K's danger sense goes off as all the souls start surging everywhere, pouring out of the goblin's body. Now that its stabilizer is gone, he realizes his idea only freed the souls, so they couldn't be used as fuel anymore. The problem is, in this state they're about to become a soul tide, desperately searching for someone to possess his friends or any living thing in the dungeon. Now he has to control them somehow, but he already used too much power and is not a true king, so his only choice is to try again with a lichen. The lichen is back to his normal state, and K realizes the hat was really made to evolve a goblin into Kaima Morio, so he should be able to control the souls. Still, by the game's own logic, if he truly succeeds, K may not be able to stop him. That's the risk, so he only needs him to become the great king for a moment, just long enough to control the souls. He places the hat on him, sending the lichen into a place surrounded by the souls of his own kind, all trapped with the pain of being eaten so another creature could grow stronger. They scream that they aren't NPCs and curse him while she waits for him to hurry and use. The power goblins were once demigods who guided wandering souls to the afterlife, but when they sinned by eating their own kind, the hat sealed that power, and they were cursed to become low-ranked monsters. That's why the souls beg him to save them or rage at him for being eaten to strengthen others. They all hate him and deny that he is their king. Hearing all that bitterness from his own people, he cries out and begs them to leave him alone. Then suddenly he hears a voice asking him to put the souls to sleep. He sees K's glowing figure offering him the hat. He understands that K awakened the hat's true power to stop him. Seeing K as the real owner, he accepts the command of the one he now recognizes as his king. Meanwhile, inside the train, Raccoon and Panda run through the halls, still shaken by what they just saw. All they know is that two monsters were fighting at a level around a Class C lizard king. Panda asks what they'll do about their missing teammates, but the leader remembers their terrifying version of K and loses his nerve. He says he feels bad for them, but is going back to the Ark. Panda doesn't like that and thinks they should go back, but his leader insists there's hell over there. Ignoring his partner's complaints, Raccoon just wants to leave before he dies too. Right then the roof breaks open and something crashes down hard, kicking up a cloud of dust. Raccoon turns to run at once, but Panda stops him because the one who fell is human. Their clearly brave leader sends his partner to check if it's one of their own. But then something else drops down the lichen, who orders them to back off. They're terrified at first, until they realize the masks were blocking their view. What they're actually facing is a tiny, adorable but furious chibi version trying hard to look scary. He can't even handle the hammer he's carrying and falls over, then gets back up and keeps trying to intimidate them, leaving the animal head duo totally confused. Elsewhere in the middle of it all, a lichen is nearly killed, thinking he'll need more souls next time so he can get revenge and show them the company's power. But then he feels a presence getting ready to fight, even though nobody is nearby. His body suddenly starts being forced down, dropping him to his knees before his new master Jack, who makes it clear he won't let him die until he pays back everything he owes. Jack presses him about the company and asks who he is. When it's obvious he won't talk, Jack reveals who he really is, the cruelest one. They're the real Jack. Meanwhile, K seems to be fighting restless souls that are about to devour them all. Then he suddenly wakes up completely Confused, it only gets stranger when the first thing he sees is the mini lichen clearly happy to see his very confused king. That's when Kay learns he's been asleep for 2 whole days, just as Hannah comes to visit with Goran, whose presence makes the lichen very uncomfortable. Kay then tries to figure out what happened with the intelligence service base. Surprised the government is still standing at all. Hannah explains that Jack went to negotiate with them because things are a mess right now. The roads are blocked by lizardmen, and there's still a dungeon they haven't cleared, so they'll need to gather an army if they want to destroy it. Kay quickly asks about the survivors, and Hannah says they found a G1 alive, but in terrible shape, so Desu took him to get treated at the Ark. He was the only one sent there because they don't have room for anyone else. At the same time, the mini-lichen asks his king for orders, but Kay would rather hear about the children's souls, which were apparently preserved. Even if Kay and the lichen want to help, they can't pull out specific souls from the hat. The lichen also makes one thing clear: the only goblin king now is Kay. That actually makes sense since the lichen can't fully control it either. His white name shows he's a player, and after putting the souls to sleep, he lost all his power and ended up this tiny, so they'll need another way. The lichen tells him the only thing he needs is to raise his kingly dignity. Kay has no idea what that means, but for now Jack comes back from the Ark. Kay assumes Desu came too, but no, Higuan is still in bad shape. The one who did return is the fake Jack, who now seems to be the real Jack's pack mule and punching bag after trying to trick him. Kay recognizes him by the angel earrings and realizes that's why deals with him were always fair. Those earrings punished both sides if either one lied. But if that's true, Kay still doesn't get how he got scammed in the old game, and the guy tries to blame a server bug that removed the penalties. Kay drops it and asks if Jack learned anything from the new slave, but Jack says is mostly useful as a punching bag. So instead Kay asks about a king's dignity. Jack says they need a pair of horns, the booster hoblins use to control souls. He knows where to find an item that should work, and with help from the Ark they can move to a nearby area called Bermuda. Anna is confused by the name, but Jack explains it came from him, because they were assigned that mission after the team sent to investigate vanished right after getting a distress signal from their captain Joel. The message had 3 key words: high danger and goblin orb, so they decide to make use of both things at once. They're linked to the goblins and the Ark's investigation mission. Kay asks the lichen if getting the orb will really let them free the souls. The lichen says it should, but only if the orb is made from real horns. Kay still doesn't really get what the king's dignity is supposed to mean, but one thing is obvious: if they get that item he could become a lot stronger. After all, clearing AD rank dungeon already boosted him a lot, even if he still can't use the hat. The Blade of Regret is unlocked now, and that's enough for him to decide it's time to move out for Bermuda, which Jack says is in Hamsail Inside World, the famous amusement park. At that very moment, the Ark scout team is being cornered by a huge beast that won't stop chasing their captain, forcing him to sprint back to his men while trying to figure out how the lizard men ended up there too, along with goblins and a dungeon boss nearby. With so many different monsters mixed together, making a plan is impossible. In the end, Captain Yahello reaches his men, who are just as worn out, and he asks what they even came here to find. The blonde soldier says it's the goblin orb. He thinks he saw it once in the game. Yahello figures that if the orb is really here, it may explain the mix of creatures and weapons outside. The blonde soldier doesn't care about that if they don't make it out alive. Yahello tells him they will. They have to. This place is hell, and they need to escape so they can warn the others before anyone else walks into the same trap. Meanwhile, Kay, Hannah, and Han get ready to leave, while the train is apparently left to Jack. They put him in charge of the souls and warn him not to do anything stupid while they're gone. He asks them to trust him, but neither Kay nor Hannah trust him at all. Even so, Kay has another concern. The mobile dungeon's boss is the lichen, but now he's Kay's subordinate, and Kay has no idea how that works. Sometime later, Kay, Hannah and Han arrive at the amusement park, and there doesn't seem to be any danger. That only makes Kay more uneasy. Hannah though is excited. It's her first time at an amusement park. She proudly says that as an idol she never really had a childhood, and only saw places like this when she was performing, which makes it a little sad. They soon reach the entrance to World Lot, and Hannah rushes in without thinking, excitedly urging Kay along. He's far more careful, because everything looks too clean and orderly for an abandoned place. Still he goes in, almost right away. Kay realizes he's somehow brought 2 kids and a mini goblin on a field trip, and seeing all 3 staring around with pure excitement gives him a weird feeling. It bothers him a little, but it also feels strangely nice, like a quick glimpse of his old life. His feeling doesn't last long. Something grabs his attention, and Kay activates Dragon Hearing. He senses a strange wave of energy suddenly wrap around them, and at the same time the carousel starts moving by itself. Everyone goes on alert. Kay senses movement rushing toward them at high speed and warns that a huge horde is coming, so everyone gets ready. They draw their weapons, and then everything stops when the park suddenly fills with what look like normal people, families, couples, and visitors walking around like nothing is wrong. At the same time, The announcer welcomes everyone to the happiest place, full of dreams and romance. Kay tries to make sense of it, but Kay is just as lost, and to make things worse, some visitors recognize Hannah and start freaking out. Some think she's cosplaying, others guess she's filming a movie, and the tension rises fast. The whole group is already confused enough, so they decide not to risk more. Kay throws a smoke grenade and they vanish from the area before anyone can react. Meanwhile, a bunch of people there were already planning to post the moment online, and when they finally get away, Kay realizes they stand out way too much. With Hannah's clothes and the mini-goblin, there's no way they blend in. They need disguises. Luckily, they quickly find a costume rental shop inside the park and come out dressed like schoolgirls. Hannah loves the cosplay, while Kay is more focused on making sure the mini-lichen looks like a little punk instead of a goblin. Han stays the same. For some reason, the attention doesn't bother him, which doesn't surprise Kay. What no one expected was for Hannah's outfit to be finished off with a hat to hide her identity even more. With that, they start exploring the place. The mini-lichen acts like a total curious kid, but after a long while, they need a break and admit the place is huge. Still, as Hannah looks around, she starts to feel like everything that happened before was just a dream, and this is the real world. That fantasy ends when she finds a park ticket dated a year ago, making her wonder if they went back in time. But when she checks their phones, the date is current, so she realizes this place is repeating one exact moment in time. It's all an illusion. Then a breeze hits, filling Hannah with nostalgia, and she feels sad knowing all of this will disappear. So she takes off her hat and snaps a selfie with Kay when he isn't expecting it. Hannah is happy now, but she doesn't want to waste this one-of-a-kind illusion. Seeing her that happy, the protagonist wonders who the real Hannah is, the tough player or the idol. But that brief moment is enough for one of her fans to recognize her and assume she's on some secret date with Kay. They instantly realize they've drawn too much attention again and have to run, just as Han scoops up the mini one and joins the escape, with no clue what they're supposed to do next. Kay tries to use Ryan to uncover the truth behind the illusion, and that somehow leads them to a nice quiet ride on the Ferris wheel, where Kay finally tells everyone that they're actually not inside a dungeon. Han doesn't get it, and looks down. He thought it was just an unfinished dungeon, and Kay thought so too at first, but they haven't gotten a single system message since entering. Han admits that's true. Even though Kay is sure it isn't a dungeon, he still can't explain what else this place could be. On top of that, Goran is practically drooling because he senses a feast nearby, so Kay is sure there must be a dungeon close by. The problem is, the essence is coming from everywhere, and is getting annoyed by the lack of answers, so Han says they'll have to investigate again. Han complains they found nothing last time, so Kay chooses a different plan. He needs Hannah, but in full idol mode. After getting everything ready, she still isn't sure doing a performance is a good idea. Kay says it's their best shot. While they were searching, he noticed several strange energy flows. Whenever they got close, those energies vanished, so they need to lure them in instead. Hannah mostly doubts the method, but she doesn't have much choice. Han comes back with the mini-lichen after finishing the stage setup, and everything is ready, but right before they start, Hannah stops them. If she's going to perform, she wants to do it properly, because even if all this is fake, for the people here, it's still real. So they set it up like a real show, and the smoke machines kick off the performance, pulling the whole park's attention toward the stage, just as Hannah Festival's famous song begins. At first, people aren't sure if it's really her, until Hannah appears, bursting onto the stage. Excited fans start cheering and recording with their phones while she raises the energy of the crowd. Kay watches and ends up admiring her along with the fans, while Han is just staring at her curves. The protagonist forces himself to look away and activates Ryan to search for the strange energy, refusing to let all the work fall only on Hannah. Then he notices something. Strange mascots are slowly gathering in the middle of the crowd. Kay remembers seeing them ever since they entered the park. They always show up when Hannah draws a big crowd, so he tells her to get ready. Hannah instantly gets serious as the mascots move toward the stage, saying the guests need to go on the rides, and she must not interfere. One of them leaps at Hannah with a huge axe, but Kay cuts in before it can touch her, landing a fast kick that knocks it off the stage. She snaps at them not to ruin the show, but in that moment, the illusion breaks. The park announcer starts glitching, and then everything changes as night operation begins. The families, the visitors, everyone in the park vanishes all of a sudden, leaving the place completely empty, until Han points something out to the protagonist. A mixed horde of monsters is appearing right in front of them. Kay doesn't waste a second and gets ready, striking the first one while warning the others to stay sharp, because now the park has officially entered its true phase, Monster Night. After Kay wipes out the monsters, he tries to understand what this place really is if it's not a dungeon. As he looks around, he spots a little rabbit holding a big black orb. He needs to check it out, but the rabbit immediately runs. The protagonist starts after it, but quickly stops because of the desperate cries from Han, Lycan, and even Hannah. They can't handle the huge monster horde on their own. Kay hesitates for a second, but in the end he lets the rabbit go and turns back to help his friends. Meanwhile, in Zone 3 of the arc, a group of soldiers holds position at the entrance, aiming at a suspicious man who claims he's from Kim Kang's unit. He introduces himself as Hone, and asks to see Captain Han Suk to report something. The captain is already hearing this over the radio, shocked that someone really survived Bermuda, and asks about the others. Hone says his teleport skill let him escape, but everyone else is still trapped inside what they classified as a massive trap with traces of dungeons. He's sure it's at least OC level. At the same time, high-level players aren't supposed to enter, which only confuses Suk more. But apparently that dungeon is tied directly to memory, and the stronger a person's memories are, the more those memories can become even more dangerous, leaving Suk speechless. After a tense pause, he says a rescue team was already sent, but now we jump back 1 hour earlier, right outside Outworld, where a squad of masked company agents heads for the possible dungeon at the amusement park. Most of these places show up in famous landmarks, and they're hoping Keck is there, since it seems they've been tracking him from the haunted house all the way here, not knowing Bermuda, a place full of disappearances and missing data. They figure that if Keck came here, then he must know something about the first game. They even suspect he found some kind of exploit that made him so strong, so their leader doesn't want anyone else reaching him first. That's why he decides to move in with his whole team and stop him, rushing into the park at full speed. But they freeze when they spot families and kids having fun everywhere. Some of them aren't even sure what they're seeing is real. Then the leader looks closer and notices something even stranger. The buildings that were ruined outside look untouched in here. He starts thinking this place is hiding something big, and tells his team to move carefully. They keep trying to make sense of it, but they don't get far before the crowd starts stirring because they heard that Hannah Choi is singing. They don't know if it's real, but they know she was with Keck, so the leader goes to check. Even then, they still don't make it far before the world starts going dark. The leader tries to rally his men just as a giant wolf leaps at his back. He barely dodges it, then pulls out his weapon and drops the beast, only to turn and find a whole army of monsters in front of him. So he gets his men ready and they all charge into battle, with orders to kill every monster that shows up. But in the middle of the chaos, the leader stops in place when he sees the terrifying Keck ahead of him, while Hannah keeps firing at the monsters and doing her best to fight. The same goes for Lycan, who wants to make his king proud, but then a huge goblin appears, and he gets mad because it's going after his king. He punches it with all his might, but that chubby little form doesn't have much strength, and one heavy hit nearly knocks the stuffing out of him and sends him flying. His pride takes the bigger hit for now because the goblin is about to finish him off when something stops it. It's Yang who keeps them safe, and Lee Khan immediately tells him not to underestimate him. A huge creature appears in front of them, and this time they're saved by Hannah, who asks if they're okay. Yang is, but Lycan still doesn't understand what's going on, as another powerful creature comes closer. Now that Mini Lycan is safe in Hannah's arms, they see that the one who saved him is Kay in his full power form. Everyone stares, thinking that with power like that the monsters should be easy. But then Kay suddenly attacks Han, who watches in terror, and Lycan notices it too. Han thinks it's some old grudge Kay wants to settle, but he gets saved again by Kay himself, leaving everyone totally confused. Still, Lycan knows the second one is the real Kay, because of the king title. Even Kay has no idea where that double came from, so now he plans to use ice power to freeze it. A little later, it seems like everyone is safe. Hannah says that since it got dark, they haven't had a second to breathe. Hannah acts like she's used to that, but she's more worried about Kaira's evil clone, which went out of control because of the item the pink rabbit had. Kaira's sure it's the goblin orb. Hannah thinks the answer is simple: catch the rabbit. Kaira isn't so sure. To him, this whole place is an illusion, including the monsters. He's convinced they're being made from the group's own memories. That leaves everyone confused, so Kay explains, no one knew about his transformation except them, so it makes sense that this place is reading what they remember. What's strange is that he still doesn't know why it works like this, so he asks what they felt when they saw him transform. Hannah, still acting like a fanboy, says it was amazing. Hannah agrees, it was incredible too, but little Lycan admits that deep down, it also scared him a little. That's when Kay thinks he figures it out. If this place is pulling from everyone's fears, then it makes sense that so many different monsters are showing up. That means this is really bad because if the theory is right, there's a chance his own worst fear could appear, the one monster he once feared most, a massive black dragon. With that, Kiem finishes explaining that this place reacts to each person's fear, so they need to find Captain Yol and get the goblin orb back fast. But the second he says that, a brutal crash cuts him off, and from above a giant centipede appears. Hannah lets out a scream so dramatic that it's almost funny. then runs to hide in a corner, making it clear to Kay that this is his worst fear. So Kay tells Han to deal with it, and Hannah waits for the order, ready to shoot wherever needed. Kay directs her straight at the weak spot of the creature, which turns out to be a ridiculously easy target, and Han blows it apart without much trouble, taking the monster down. After that, Kay checks on Han, who apologizes for freaking out and explains that when he was a kid, his father used to punish him by locking him in a box with centipedes like it was normal. Kay wasn't expecting something that dark, and for a second he just feels awkward and sorry for him. But Han cuts that off right away, making it clear there's no time to unpack trauma because another horde is already coming. Kay gets serious and tells everyone to ready their weapons, and right then Han warns them there's another one behind them. A noble-looking vampire named Norton appears. The moment Han sees him, he apologizes for bringing him into the world, because he has a very personal hatred for that NPC, thanks to a stalker he once dealt with. Carrie realizes this place can pull any fear straight out of someone's head, so he decides to end this fast. Han warns him, Norton is level 200, but Carrie doesn't care. He rushes in, and the two start an intense, even fight. Norton tries to gain the upper hand, but Carrie quickly sees he's not as strong as expected. As he dodges, he realizes this one isn't as strong as the real thing, though he still can't say he'd always win. For now, he moves at top speed, slips past the vampire's guard, grabs him at the waist, and cuts him down at close range, then tells his friends to get ready to move on. Han warns him that something's above them, and sure enough, it's the pink rabbit with the orb. Kay focuses his magic and leaps up, refusing to let it get away again. But the rabbit can jump like crazy too, escaping across the rooftops, with Kay chasing after it at full speed. He finally catches up and slams into it, making the rabbit drop the orb as it falls from the sky. Han rushes in and catches it easily, but he doesn't celebrate for long because a dark essence comes out of the orb and forms a bear that grabs it and runs off, leaving everyone confused. Kay doesn't have time to think because his danger sense goes off as something appears, tearing everything apart. His greatest fear from the game. A dungeon boss class S level 500, the colossal beast Kamucho, has appeared. Elsewhere, in near total darkness, a giant clown watches in delight, but then it notices an unwanted guest. Ko can only stare at the huge monster before him, while his friends shout, trying to understand what the hell just got summoned. Ko thinks only one thing they need to run. They don't want to leave him, but he knows they can't win this fight. The best they can do is buy time. The beast charges straight at him, and the others try to warn him, but Ko barely reacts in time to dodge. The impact shakes the whole place, and the others can hardly stay on their feet from that level of destruction. Han quickly checks Han to make sure he's still in one piece. He is, but he still has no idea what just happened. Then he notices something strange, and Han looks up too, just as shocked. In front of Kamucho stands another K, a prime version, ready to fight. Meanwhile, the real K watches the unreal scene as the two summons face each other for only a second before they attack. The dragon unleashes its fire, and the whole area fills with explosions, but the doppelganger dodges and manages to block the beast's tail strikes, then pulls back, builds momentum, and unleashes an overload attack that slices part of the monster's body. The fight leaves Han completely stunned. He can't understand how K's avatar ended up outside the game, convinced someone must have summoned it from their fear of that form. At least K calms him a little, by saying they're not even using all their power yet. Even so, after watching that battle, Han can barely believe they could be even more powerful. K explains that if this were the real Kamucho, just looking at it would have driven him insane. The ranks may be the same, and it still has the inextinguishable flame of death, that black fire that can only be beaten with weapons made from dragon materials, which that clone version doesn't have. K feels like even he would die, remembering how in the past, without those weapons, after a brutal fight, the dragon ended up killing him in the game. Even so, the clone keeps fighting while the beast only chases it in fury, and the real K realizes that even if it can't beat Kamucho, it's still buying them time. So they use that chance to escape and go after the goblin orb, pushing forward as they wipe out any monsters that get in their way. K just hopes everyone stays alive, but suddenly he has to stop when another K appears in front of them, clearly angry. Hannah starts noticing there are more and more of those monsters around, and K realizes things are getting even worse, when the shaking of the ground makes it clear that what they left behind is moving too. And that's not all. Every one of the monsters seems to be heading to the same place. Even the one they have to face looks bigger than before, so Hannah suggests they use the hero's tiny monster form to get an edge, while Han and Leekan get excited to see that transformation. But the hero knows that if he uses it against his counterpart, even if it's only an illusion, it could end up losing the children's souls. Hannah waits for him to choose and fast. KB stares ahead and decides to fight as they are, but right before they start, huge lights throw him off. A military truck appears, running over every monster in its way until it reaches them. It's being driven by Captain Ryul, who tells them to get in now, so they all pile in and leave. On the way, Ryul is glad to finally meet Kay, and says they showed up just in time. KB thanks him, still confused about how the monsters were driven back just by the truck's lights. Ryul explains that it makes sense. Those creatures react badly to light, especially sunlight. He regrets not finding them earlier in the day so they could use that advantage. But then an attack slices past and nearly takes his arm off. KB is shocked that some monster managed to follow them. But it isn't a random monster. It's his own clone. They have no choice but to shake it off while the clone starts stabbing the truck over and over until one strike hits Eri. Ryan and Jen expect the real K to handle it, and he doesn't waste time. He jumps back onto the truck, already realizing his copy can take a lot of damage. The clone attacks again right away, but KB dodges and turns that momentum against him, knocking him down and slamming him hard onto the hood. He gives him no time and jumps on top to smash his head in. There's real anger behind the blow. He's looking at his own face on that monster. Then KB drags him into the truck's headlights. The clone starts fading under the light, and right then something unlocks in KS system. He checks it fast, then heads back into the truck and tells Ryul to keep going straight to the hideout. So Ryul returns to camp, where all his men rush over worried about him until they notice Johanna and completely ignore him, leaving the captain feeling a little insulted. Once everyone is together, Ryul tries to figure out how nobody in his squad mentioned that an S-class monster was outside fighting a really ugly K. KB takes that comment pretty personally, especially since everyone seems sure the other one is the real K. Still, the bigger issue is this. The captain says they should raid the dungeon right away. That catches KB off guard. He asks if they really found it, and Ryul says yes. Then they show the path of a drone tech KB didn't even know still worked. Now it's flying over the amusement park, showing the whole area until the camera moves out and finally catches the tower, though it can't go much farther because the signal starts breaking up. Still, it manages to focus on the dungeon entrance, which looks less like a doorway and more like a black hole. The problem starts when the drone stops responding. At first they think it's the monsters, but when the camera turns, they spot a company team and KB gets it at once. They must be the ones who summoned his clone. Now they're smashing the drone while the soldier controlling it complains about how much it cost. The others stay pretty calm, and Han is first to guess the company took over the dungeon. KB isn't so sure. If that were true, a full-power KB wouldn't be wandering around outside. What matters now is stopping them, and he tries to explain that to the captain. But Ryul and his men just stare back like they understand nothing about KS clone. K realizes he'll have to fill them in first. Meanwhile, the company figures out they've been found, which makes things worse after barely surviving that full-power K. Even so, what matters now is figuring out what the hell they're looking at, because this clearly isn't a normal dungeon. Their leader is convinced of one thing. This has to be the source of Bermuda's power. Energy like this doesn't show up twice, and if they can control it, they could turn it into a weapon against K. He reminds them their mission is to collect dungeon flowers to speed up ruptures, but also to turn special dungeons into weapons, just like they did with the Ghost Front station. If they can do it again here, promotions are basically guaranteed. That finally wins everyone over. And now they're already thinking about bonuses while the leader keeps their spirits up, and suddenly something shoots past them so fast the group barely has time to react before they see the bear with the orb running right through everything straight for the portal and leaving them stunned. But the leader doesn't hesitate and decides to chase it, so they all rush after it into the portal. Meanwhile, KS group gets ready to face a giant orc. Ryul plans to help on the count of 3, but K drops it in a single hit, leaving everyone stunned. Ryul asks if K wants to go after the orb, but K figures it's probably inside the dungeon too and must be one of the main monster's weapons. If they clear the dungeon, it might lose its owner. Hannah worries that if it didn't appear with the dungeon, clearing it might not make it disappear, but K feels it's too important not to be connected. He trusts that it probably is, and Han doubts that's even possible, but K points out that in a world that works like a game now, nothing is impossible. So they move forward with purpose, K leading the way, knowing that if they finish this, they won't just get the orb, they'll also learn what's causing the chaos outside with the clones. But even after going in and touching the dungeon, the system gives them nothing. Still, the strange familiar feeling makes K want to touch it again. That only makes the portal turn unstable and spread through the whole area. Creatures start pouring out everywhere while the system warns that this strange energy is corrupting all of Lockworld. One of those things attacks the group and K cuts it down in one strike. Hannah asks where they are, but K doesn't know. A new side quest appears. Clear the whole park of parasites. If they do, a themed dungeon called Dungeon Puppeteer will be created. There's no reward, just a clean park, and K can't make sense of that at all. At the same time, underground, a group from the Ark gets off the ghost train, thanks to Jack, who looks pretty pleased with the great pay he got for the ride. Apparently Jack is using a D-class dungeon, like a regular train, and the group is led by Han, who guides Captain Hansoak toward Hotel World. They move carefully, especially because he knows he'll have to face memories from the original dream side. He also remembers there are two outsiders inside, Kay and Clark, and he still can't believe that Rough Cowboy is actually an idol. Even so, if they're trapped in there, then they're probably in a disaster zone, so the group keeps moving carefully until they reach the underground entrance to the park. The problem is that it's blocked. Han decides to go up and check what's happening above, only to find the surface completely overrun by giant parasites. That leaves everyone totally confused, and things get worse when a silver-tailed dragon suddenly cuts across the sky. It looks like someone in the group summoned it out of pure panic. The scare is so bad that they lose focus, and a parasite grabs them by the legs, lifting them into the air before dropping them right onto its jaws and starting to eat. Everyone watches in horror, especially Han, but Hansoak isn't nearly as shocked. He remembers the parasites from the tutorial. That makes Han think of those cockroaches, so he tells them to save the crime for later, because they need to get through now. Still, looking at all those creatures, he isn't sure they really can. Back with Kay at his group, Kay tries to protect everyone from the parasites. He throws his sword with all his strength and activates Freezing Flash, sending out a powerful wave that freezes every monster before shattering them in one blow. Even so, he still doesn't understand all the disappearances. Most likely those monsters ate the victims while transforming this place into a dungeon, using players as sacrifices. That makes him realize what's inside the portal, a seed room. Lottie World hasn't fully turned into a dungeon yet, but they still have to hurry and beat the boss before the company does. Ral doesn't think that's a good idea, but Kay says it's simple. If the boss dies, the dungeon dies too. Ral argues they should fall back to the Ark and regroup, but Kay refuses. He knows the company will use the dungeon flower to speed the process up, so the only thing they can do is push ahead and destroy it. He moves out with some soldiers who almost get eaten, but Hannah covers them while Han and Leekan push on without fear. Together they make their way through the parasites all the way to the dungeon, with Han going in first. Hannah is right behind him, but Kay tells her to keep going with the others while he stays back for a moment, waiting until everyone gets inside. Right then a huge mass of parasites lunges at him, and Kay holds his ground until the last second before diving into the portal, letting the monster crash into the dungeon entrance instead. He appears in the Puppet Master's secret room, Pyro, but the moment Kay enters, the system detects the goblin helmet and sends him somewhere else, same as the others. Hannah ends up completely alone and starts looking for everyone right away. The first one she finds is Leekan, who's frantically searching for his king. Hannah figures the others must be nearby, though the little guy is acting way too excited about the search. She can tell that no matter how much the chibi goblin denies it, he's actually pretty scared. Hannah realizes she'll have to deal with a child, and Leekan begs her not to leave him behind. So once they're together, she tries talking to him, guessing he wasn't always a monster. But the little one just proudly repeats that he's a member of the Goblin clan. Hannah starts to think he may have gotten some of his memories back, and hopes he can explain how he went from monster to NPC, but it's obvious he has no idea either. So Hannah guesses he's just a guided NPC tied to some hidden mission about the dignity of the. Even that gets cut short when something huge smashes through the wall and bursts out of the dust. Hannah embraces herself, but all she finds is the monster's remains. Then someone else shows up, something even worse, a clone of Kay. Hannah can't believe it because the real one already told her she'd never beat him. Still, she raises her weapon and triggers her blood skill. Meanwhile, Ki drops into a place that's completely white, with no real light or shadow, just an empty world until a voice calls him guest and sends a chill through him. Ki spins around and draws his weapon, ready to fight, but instead he finds an ordinary office worker named Nazo greeting him. Ki is so confused he has no answer, so the office worker decides to show him a short video explanation. A big screen appears and shows him the year 2002, back when Nazo was just an eager rookie trying to give everything on his first day at work. But like always, luck was never on his side. He missed his train, and the next one was packed. By afternoon he got chewed out. His first day on the job was a total mess, mostly because of his own nerves, and the trip home didn't make anything better. Still, the next day he chose to get to work early, even earlier than needed, because he had one clear goal. But Ki instantly notices the date. It's the release day of Dreamsy 2, Nazo confirms it. That day he was the first to arrive at Hotel World, and that's when his bad luck put him face to face with the place's boss, the clown Piero. He froze in terror, unable to move, just waiting for death to reach him, thinking this awful day at work was about to become his last, and in the dumbest, most pointless way possible. But then something strange happened. The goblin orb brought him back to life, a twisted gift from the clown himself. It turned him into an empty puppet with no memories, and almost no emotions, and as a final gift, Piero left him that relic with one simple order: cause a bloodbath, then disappear. That's how Naso woke up in the amusement park, and from then on, anyone who entered without knowing the truth got killed by the monsters of the night opening. Their fear and trauma started filling his mind, twisting into creatures that hunted them night after night. The real problem came when some people started figuring out what was going on. More and more came to investigate, and every one of them died horribly, so every new visitor just became another life fed to the night. Kay didn't understand why Naso is showing him all this. Naso doesn't seem fully sure either. Maybe it's because he doesn't want to be forgotten, or maybe he wants to clear his conscience. In the end, he admits he's only a leftover loop of that rookie's thoughts, and to help Kay understand, he shows the form Kay probably knows him by already. The bear mascot, the same bear Kay remembers stealing the orb and running off. Naso says that in a way it is him, but only halfway. The bear and Naso are both just parts of the same thing, pieces of the park made to bring out its full power. Kay realizes they all have a puppeteer. Naso says yes, but they're only versions that don't know the rookie's true feelings. After wandering the park for a long time, working there, the real rookie finally got his memories back and understood he had died and returned. But tied to the orb, all he could do was run and try to warn people. He failed every time, and no matter how much he tried to understand how that world worked by day and night, he could only conclude that Piero is a terrible storyteller. He loves watching people enjoy themselves during the day just so he can enjoy their bloody deaths even more at night. What really entertains him most are the choices people make when they're pushed to the edge, when fear forces them to choose between survival and losing everything. Those emotions are the ones Naso can feel too, but every time it all ended, he went back to being nothing more than a loose thought inside the system. This time though, something is different. He clearly recognizes Kay, and that surprises him. But Naso reminds him of something important. He used to be a player too, and he never even got the chance to receive his starting reward. Now he begins to fade, realizing he has almost no time left, so he decides to ask Kay for one favor. Since Kay now has the goblin helmet, Naso also gives him the orb, and Kay takes it without really understanding what's going on. But the moment he does, the system grants him a new skill, King's Footprints. He's still trying to process what just happened, when Naso asks for one thing: become the orb's owner. He believes that if Kay does, the item will finally reveal its true power. Kay is still confused, but Naso insists, if he really wants to face Piero, he needs to control that orb. Then he gives one last warning. If Kay ever fights the clown, he'd better not blink, not breathe, and most importantly, no clue, because the system senses the rest. As his body starts to vanish, Kay tries to get him to repeat it, but Naso says he can't. Those words are blocked by the system, so before he disappears completely, he leaves one final warning. Don't trust the clown's updates, because to them, Kem is now the biggest threat. Meanwhile, Hannah tells Leekan to get somewhere safe while she handles Kemmer's clone, which comes at her hard. She barely avoids each attack, trying to make some space, but the clone catches her off guard by summoning 2 daggers and firing them straight at her. Hannah uses Eagle Eye to react just in time and dodge them, landing in a confident pose. The clone doesn't even give her a second to enjoy it before creating a sphere of light that swells into a giant energy orb and hurls it at her. Hannah sees it coming and moves at the last second, dodging it by only a few inches. As she gets back up, she can't help wondering what kind of class K even had in the game. She's just glad this isn't the real one, so she stops thinking and goes straight to ending it by firing a fragmentation round that shifts mid-air. The clone fails to dodge, and for the first time, it goes down. Hannah doesn't waste the chance. She rushes in and peppers it with bomber rounds, but even from the ground, the bastard still blocks several of the shots. That's when Hannah realizes this isn't just a clone, it's a monster. And when she sees it stand up again, she knows for sure that's not Kuro, just a brainless monster. And she's going to use that. With a snap of her fingers, she triggers a bullet trap, and every shell she fired earlier starts to glow where it got stuck before exploding one after another, bringing the whole area down on top of the clone, with nowhere to run. It freezes in fear as Hannah watches the debris smash its weapon and body to pieces. That ends it. Then she calls for Leekan and moves on, hoping Kay is okay. Meanwhile, in the Laid Tower hallway, Lark soldiers are running from the other K and quickly run into Ryu and another soldier, who's shocked to find their friends with 2 Ks in different outfits right behind them. The blonde one asks his captain if Kay wasn't supposed to be their ally, but the answer is clear, that isn't Kay. After the monsters were wiped out by the Ks, it ran out of prey, so now it's hunting players instead. They sprint full speed until they notice something coming from the shadows, announcing itself with a shot that passes by their heads and flies straight at the Ks. Everyone lights up when they see Hannah the shooter, hoping she got there in time. At the same time, the real K is still in the white world, using his blood to become the owner of the goblin orb. That creates a flash so bright it almost blinds him, but the system confirms him as Goblin King and begins the king's imprint. Once it finishes, the orb returns to its true form, a much smaller sphere of light that transforms into the Goblin King's ring. Kay sees the power it now gives him. He can summon spirits. Now he understands why Leekan said he needed the orb, so he imprints it right away, confirming it and taking on the true form of the Goblin King, gaining the king senses and a skill called Morg. That power lets him see other people's souls and tell whether they're good or bad, which is enough for him to bring people back. He also learns the whole lot world was created by the ring, both the people and the monsters. He sees that Naso created all the creatures, and they were nothing but the fears of the people who came there. Those fears repeated again and again, feeding terror for Pierrot's enjoyment. For now Kay can also see that the space Naso created, or what was left of his consciousness, is collapsing now that he's gone. Kay doesn't even care, because he's already opened a portal back to the main area. Meanwhile, in the lot cinema, many bodies are slumped between the seats while the blonde soldier tries to face the Kay chasing him. He trembles knowing he has no chance and fires one desperate arrow, shutting his eyes so he won't see the end, right when Kay appears to save him, taking in the mess that happened while he was gone. Now he has to fight another one of his clones, guessing Naso sent him back to help them. Just then Hannah shows up too, ready to fight. While little Lycan can't hide how happy he is to see his real master again, Kay figures the situation out fast. His clone may supposedly be level 200, but it has no brain, just a basic urge to kill. So he stops wasting time dodging and decides to target its weaknesses head-on. The two charge at each other, and in the clash Kay recognizes the weapon his clone is using, the same sword he used in the past when he still lacked attack power, a durable blade packed with abilities even when it was broken. The sword was tough, even when chipped, but it was also heavy. Kay used that to his advantage. One sharp kick sent the clone flying. Then he aimed for the part of the armor where he had once traded defense for more speed. The clone barely blocked it, but Kay stayed calm. He had the edge and experience, and with non-stop pressure, he brought down his own copy. Right in the middle of the fight, his Morg skill suddenly activated. At the same time, Hannah launched herself into the air, lining up a headshot on the other clone. Kay caught on right away and grabbed the enemy just in time, letting her shot hit clean. It finally ended the battle, and Li Kong and Han cheered. Kay only wanted to know if everyone was okay, and once they said yes, he told them to get ready for what was coming. Some thought it was just another bluff, but Kay made it clear it was worse. The second he said that, something massive crashed down with a brutal impact. When the dust settled, the dungeon boss stood in front of them, peer out the puppeteer. He was furious that they had taken his orb and demanded to know why a human had touched a king's property. His voice shook the whole place and sent pain through everyone. Even Kay instantly knew this thing was far stronger than the earlier D-rank boss. Worse, it wasn't just a monster, it was an intelligent creature, and couldn't understand why the boss was here when they hadn't finished any mission yet. So Kay explained that he already had the orb. Still, the ring only brings creatures into form. It doesn't give them a mind of their own. They only obey the one who holds it. Using Ruin, Kay checked Pierrot's magical energy and immediately saw that it belonged to high-ranking demons. When one of those demons also has intelligence, it's called a Mahawk, that told him all he needed to know. What stood before them was a demon, at least level 300, maybe higher. Pierrot threw out a card packed with energy that made everything tremble. It was basically an invitation to die by his hand, and with it he created his territory. A thick fog spread everywhere, blinding the whole area. Kay dodged a few attacks on instinct, but frustration started building as that dense energy closed in around him. He tried using Ruin to take back control, but the technique was fully shut down, which only made him even angrier. In the chaos, Kay had to block a strike coming straight at him, and it turned out to be the drone pilot. At first it looked like he was just lost in the fog, but one look at his face told Kay it was mind control. Panna figured that out almost right away too. She guessed the demon fog from Pierrot was the cause, so she ordered the few people still conscious not to breathe it in, and to keep their eyes shut. The problem was that almost no one was still standing. Rahicha's men were already under control. They rushed at the group, clearly trying to take the orb. Kay had no choice but to deal with them, knocking them out, and when the others kept coming, he dropped them too. He did it easily with a dagger before switching back to his usual sword. But just when he thought it was over, the puppet soldiers stood back up. Kay was relieved that at least Heine still hadn't been controlled, but he could tell his own body was slowly giving in to the Magi fog. Luckily, he managed to clear his head with calm. Still, one thing worried him. The longer they stayed in there, the more likely everyone would end up like the others. He couldn't drag this fight out any longer, so he activated Morgan, and right away he could clearly see the souls around him, separating the clean ones from the corrupted ones. He focused on the ones that weren't tainted, finished his transformation, and then used his new skill Goblin Fire, channeling its power through his sword. With a single slash, he cut through the Magi controlling his allies, and they were freed at once. That only amused Piero, who fired off energy beams, sure that no matter how much Kay resisted, he would end up as another puppet. The hero charged straight in, breaking through the attacks to reach the clown, only for a protective barrier to stop him. Kay realized that if this kept going, the other players there would die. Then Leekon's voice appeared, praising his king. He moved forward in a much more solid form, and Kay was confused by the full power, though he guessed it had something to do with the orb. He pushed that aside and focused on the annoying clown, fed up with his bad jokes. Charging his sword with spirits, he leaped high with all that power gathered in one strike, then came down on the giant clown. Piero got his karma in the form of a massive slash that tore off his head, stopping the dungeon's conversion, defeating the boss and clearing the secret stage in Lot World. But then energy started getting pulled into the clown's body through his web, leaving confused by what was left of him. Meanwhile, the others woke up from the demon energy's control. The blonde soldier realized he'd apparently killed one of his allies while he was controlled, and he started to panic. Rurul tried to calm him down. In a moment like this, what mattered was getting out alive. Even though he sounded sure of himself, he was deeply worried and asked Kay if it was really over. Kay told him he got the boss's XP. The body had burned away like a corpse, and also earned the title True Explorer, that gave him a buff in new areas. For a second, they thought it was all over, but his friends urgently called him over to show him that outside the tower, there was nothing left. Rurul asked what happened, but Kay would guess they were stuck in a game bug, a level that had never been finished, leaving them sealed off. He made it clear that what they saw outside wasn't fog, it was actual nothingness. Rurul couldn't make sense of it, so Kay would ask Hannah what would happen if a dungeon was cleared at the same time the boss was killed. She admitted something like this could happen in theory, but Kay knew it had already happened in the earlier game. Rurul remembered it too, the infamous reintegration event, a bug that happened if the boss died before the dungeon fully ended. The real problem was that the players got dumped into a system error, a lost dungeon, and everyone was disconnected right away, with their accounts burned for good after being trapped in a dungeon with no exit. Elsewhere in Lot World, Hanso pushed forward through the parasites, feeling his team wasn't ready for a fight on that level. Then a dragon appeared in front of them and scared the parasites away, that gave them a chance to reach the dungeon. They hoped to find someone alive before it ended, especially Kay and Clark. Without them, the Ark had no chance at all, but they didn't get far before a violent quake shook the whole area and the ground started collapsing. Hansok yelled for everyone to jump, but he was too late. In a flash, light swallowed them and more than half the squad vanished completely, leaving only a huge hole behind. The only ones still standing were the captain and Hono, both still confused. The captain threw a rock into the hole, but it bounced off something invisible. That's when he realized a kind of dome was covering the area, and it became clear the others were trapped inside what looked like a system error trying to stabilize itself. Hansok understood that if that was true, there was only one option: check the Ark, check the dungeon creation code, and find a way to fix it as fast as possible. 2 days passed with Kay's group wandering that world, a little calmer now and focused on finding a way out. They searched the park and the tower, but found nothing. Their phones had no signal, nearby zones were blocked, and Kay studied the barrier around them, realizing just how cut off they were. Rob remembered cases of players who had 3 lives and still never got their accounts back after getting trapped there, and the drone kids started thinking they were doomed. KB didn't see it that way. To him, everyone was looking at this the wrong way, because this case was different. Back then the bug was not being able to log in. This time they were already inside, they just couldn't leave. So KB shared his only idea: they would trigger a dungeon break themselves. Sometime later, they apparently ran into the part of the squad that had fallen into the dungeon. After both sides caught each other up, it looked like things might be okay for a few days thanks to their supplies. But when they opened their inventory, it bugged out and threw everything, everywhere. That confused the lieutenant's group, who couldn't even close the inventory. The hero guessed the system had abandoned them, so it was better not to mess with it. Raw pointed out that if the inventory didn't work, maybe the dungeon break system wouldn't either, which would ruin their only plan. He said they needed to prepare for the worst. KB understood Rurul was trying to keep people from panicking, but he chose to hold on to hope. He told him everything would be fine once they found that man, the one who led the company's group. They needed him if they wanted to work together. Rurul doubted those terrorists would help, but the hero was sure they would. He remembered the company well: awful people, capable of horrible things, but driven by one simple rule: survive in a world where monsters clearly had the upper hand. They always sided with the stronger force, so he had no doubt they'd agree to help. In the end, they also wanted to stay alive, so the search continued. Using Ramon, Kak tracked nearby presences and found them quickly. Rurul noticed, and ordered everyone to get ready for all-out war. But the hero tried to calm things down before they got out of control. He didn't get the chance. A masked figure suddenly appeared with Han as a hostage, and everyone froze, wondering when he had even been taken. Han remembered they grabbed him when he hurried off to use the bathroom, but he decided not to say that part. Teak stayed calm and made one thing clear: they hadn't come to fight, they just wanted to make a deal. Then the group's leader steps out and asks what Kang wants. MC tells him he already knows why they were there. They were hiding and waiting to take over the dungeon. But now everyone is trapped in the same world. The leader doesn't get why that matters, and he starts to regret thinking they were smarter. That jab ticks the leader off, but he settles down when King says he has a way out. The protagonist makes one thing clear: if they work together, this stays simple. If not, it turns into a disaster for everyone. So the leader agrees to hear him out. MC starts with the most important point: waiting for the system to come back won't fix this. In a game's code, a restore never brings everything back at once. And the second he says that, proof shows up right in front of them. Everyone starts dodging strange scissors made of pixels as they rip through the area. Whenever they touch someone, that person vanishes. Kang realizes they're cutting away the whole space, deleting the error. Then clicking shapes begin falling like arrows from above, dropping like bombs that erase everything they hit. It shows the system is using the easiest way to fix the game: wipe it all and restart. It's basically a full reset, auto-deleting, cutting and erasing one piece after another without caring what's still inside. As more of the place disappears, Kang waits for the masked leader to make up his mind. Seeing he has no other choice, the man agrees to work with them. But first he wants something from K: a pact, not a contract, a pact. If someone breaks it, the system brands them a traitor for breaking their word, and that mark follows them in every deal after that. It also brings penalties and battle limits. The punishment fades with time, but it's still a pain. The masked leader asks for it because he doesn't trust Kang, and K doesn't trust him either. After all, Kang has betrayed the company's top traders more than once. They're sworn enemies. K was already thinking about stabbing him in the back once this was over. Still, he admits the guy is sharp, so he agrees. That means neither side can hurt the other for the next 2 days. The pact is sealed, and the system warns them what happens if anyone breaks it. With that settled, the masked man asks for the plan, and K says, Step 1 is using the dungeon flower at the top of the tower, the part that still hasn't been erased, taking them back to where all of this started. So they move out. As they go through the halls, the company people stay on guard in case this is a trap. But soon they find something they never expected: the monster's body. K uses his Morg eyes and moves in until he senses the clown's soul. Using the goblin ring, he tries to summon it. The problem is, his level might not be high enough, so all he can do is hope it works. And somehow it does. Everyone is shocked when it appears, but now it's only a puppet. King can tell it's just a tiny piece of the full soul badly worn down since death. After that, it's the company's turn, and K orders them to spread dungeon flowers all over the place. The leader knows refusing would be the same as dying, so he sends out his men, who apparently have a lot of them. That surprises K, who starts thinking they've been growing them in bulk. Once they plant the last one, they finally get what they wanted. The dungeon goes into frenzy, and a huge quake begins. Right away, K tells everyone to follow Pierrot's soul, because as a dungeon boss, instinct alone lets it sense where the nearest exit is, but it moves fast, and along the way K spots something: the giant Kamucho. It's somehow still alive. K guesses the clone used light, its weakness against it, but since it's a dragon, it managed to survive. K decides to use that. He puts on the goblin hat and activates illusion. Then, like a king, he orders it to rise. The dying dragon snaps back into its most feral state, stunning everyone, only for K to use it as a ride. He yells for everyone to climb on fast and hold tight as it shoots off at full speed. The erasing scissors chase right behind them, and one company member gets hit. More clicks close in, worrying Hannah, and K is terrified because he still can't see the exit, until far ahead the clear soul of Pierrot reaches the portal. It smiles like they actually found it in time, but the relief doesn't last when one scissor heads straight for Hannah. In the end, Kamucho takes the hit, throwing itself off balance as more scissors fly at it. K tells everyone to hold on tight because there's less and less left of the dragon, and all he can do is pray the portal stays open. With the exit right there, K orders Kamucho to charge through the opening. Outside, the portal keeps getting smaller, until the dragon's huge body forces its way out, carrying everyone and crashing hard into the ground. At last, everyone celebrates. They finally escaped, and with the sky fading into sunset, they see that all the things trying to erase them are gone, and Lottle World has returned to normal. People congratulate K, but he notices a huge problem. Only half of Kamucho made it out, so everyone riding in the far back got trapped in that world. They're all gone horrified, but Ral says they need to regroup. Later things start to settle down. Kay hates how fast it all ended, even after so many of his teammates died. In that new world, death must be normal, and that thought feels empty and bleak. He hates knowing the lost souls stayed behind in a world where they don't even have real self-awareness, just memories like NASA. That's why Pyro could control them so easily. They were only shells made from memories, lifeless copies. Once those memories fade, they disappear too. His thoughts are cut off when the company's masked leader shows up, thanks him, and says that for today, he'll leave it at that. The pact is still active, so there won't be any betrayal yet, but next time, he plans to put a dagger in KS back. Kay expected nothing less, and for now, he just lets them go. After they leave, Kay returns to what's left of Kamucho. It clearly isn't the original, just a memory made by the Goblin Orb. Still, he thinks a level 100 body might be useful, so he checks inside and quickly finds the problem. The code is totally bugged, useless to him, but not to Goran, who summons himself starving and drooling in front of the giant meal. Without wasting a second, he jumps in and absorbs everything left of the dragon. When he finishes, he's so stuffed that he even changes color. Kay watches annoyed while the little guy tries to look innocent, like he didn't do anything. Kay reminds him not to eat without permission, but Goran just flops onto the ground happy and full. Kay worries eating a bug might hurt him, so he leaves the rest of the scolding to his other pet Leekan, who immediately makes it clear he's in charge, because he's the oldest. Kale watches his two pets argue, until Hannah asks if everything they went through was just a trap by Pyro, and Kale isn't so sure. The nighttime part really did seem made for the clown to enjoy everyone's fear and screams, but in the daytime, something else was happening. Something seemed to be protecting people and trying to recreate, even as an illusion, a happy Loddle world. Just then, Hannah gets an emergency call. Glad that they finally have signal again. She hopes everyone is okay, but they need to go get them. Their help is needed to defend against the attack on the Ark, where a magic shield is the only thing protecting a small group that includes a green-haired doctor, hurt and confused that the lizard men made it all the way there. A heavy blow shakes the shield, his maintaining, warning that it won't last much longer, so they have to evacuate now. People run in panic after seeing one area is already blocked. Their only thought is getting out fast, but when he goes back to the patients, nobody is moving. The place is full of injured men, women, and children. Many can barely stay awake, and most already seem to think this is the end. A soldier tries to take control and yells for them to get up. The doctor also begs them to evacuate before the Ark seals completely. That's when Daisu asks what they mean by sealed off. They're in the Ark's underground hospital, which became a shelter for weaker humans. Now that monsters are everywhere, kids, elders, and others with low endurance. But now the Ark is ready to close off that secret area, even if it means abandoning everyone inside, and the sick and wounded all fear for their lives, as the doctor tells them the place is close to falling. Right then, a violent crash shakes everything, dropping rubble from the tunnel, and the shield mage rushes in to tell everyone to get out. The doctor hopes Daisu will move too, and Daisu picks up Higuan and carries him to the exit. Once there, they find the hallway completely blocked. The detective understands at once the lizard men are sealing them in. Some injured players summon their weapons and try to dig through the wall, but Daisu stops them right away. He knows there's no way they can break through something that thick in time. That makes several of the wounded give up, but Daisu doesn't call it impossible. Just a waste of time. Then a red-haired soldier takes charge and decides they need to head for the surface. The green-haired doctor stops him at once, saying it's insane to take injured people and civilians into a place full of monsters, but the redhead reminds him of the truth. They have no choice. The shutdown order is already out. That means the Ark is only protecting one area now. Everything else is basically doomed. So he decides to lead them to the only point still being defended, and starts moving without waiting for anyone. Then he suddenly stops when the air turns hot. That's a clear sign a group of lizard men is nearby, which means their target can't be far either. Without wasting time, he pushes everyone forward, and the group starts running through the ruined city. Still, as he moves, Daisu notices everything feels way too quiet without realizing something is stalking them. The red-haired soldier tells them they can make it if they move fast, but when he looks back he sees one of his men get skewered by a lizard man. That sight terrifies everyone. They all try to run for their lives, but the monsters hunt them down. The soldiers do what they can to fight back, hoping the others can reach Zone 2. While the group keeps moving, Daisu gains some ground and realizes these lizard men aren't that strong. Oddly, that only makes him more uneasy. Then he suddenly stops. A giant lizard blocks the way, crouched there while chewing up a car. It notices him and lets out a savage roar. The pressure from it freezes Daisu in place. Fear and panic hit everyone so hard they can barely breathe. Daisu shouts for everyone to run while Ki and the others reach the ghost train. Jack welcomes them, glad they made it out alive, and rushes them inside. The train is packed with people, and Jack shows them video proof that the lizard men broke in after crushing the city's first defense line. That leaves Rebro shaken, and Jack explains that even though the soldiers are still resisting, the monsters are too many guns and plans barely matter now. Daisu realizes everyone here escaped from the Ark because of one creature that smashed through their defenses, the giant soul lizard men, a massive beast strong enough to wipe out buildings. Daisu knows Zone 2 can still fight back, but the real problem isn't just that monster. Jack confirms it. If one of those is here, then the dungeon must have ranked up to C class and already ruptured. Meanwhile, Daisu leads his small group of survivors as they flee. They barely manage to avoid the monster's attacks, and Daisu quickly admits that Beast looks like something out of a movie, way more overwhelming than every ghost train boss put together. He doesn't even know if they'll survive. He can't think about it for long though, because the green-haired doctor calls out to him while trying to shield a woman carrying her baby. He warns that this area is full of lizard men too. So Daisu pulls out his wave spear and carves a path through the enemies. The problem is, weak or not, there are just too many, even for him. Then a violent crash shakes the whole area, and a huge blast nearly cuts off their route. After seeing that kind of power, nobody doubts it. If they stop, they die, so they have no choice but to run with everything they have towards Zone 2. And when they finally arrive, Daisu finds a scene that leaves him stunned. A huge crowd is piled up at the gate, forcing their way forward and screaming to be let in. They beg before the monsters arrive, push against the bars and plead for the children. The only answer they get is the cold shine of guns pointed right at them, ready to fire if they keep pushing. One refugee still manages to cry out, but he gets shot straight in the chest. His body drops right in front of Daisu. He just stares, unable to process what he's seeing. Back at the ghost train, a lot of the kids celebrate getting their bodies back thanks to the hero, but he doesn't stay to hear their thanks. He leaves at once, moves through the train to the farthest point Jack says they can reach, and decides to continue alone from there. Before going, he tells them to protect the refugees, and Jack makes it clear he's completely ready. His goblins will attack the second they need it. When they reach the surface, they find the grim aftermath of battle, with bodies everywhere. At the same time, Ogain complains there isn't any tasty food left around, though he senses something in the distance. The hero notices he's gotten more talkative after eating kamuchi, but what matters now is that if the source is far away, they must be in the eye of the storm. He asks Ryerson how far the next zone is, and Ryu says Zone 3, the residential area, is the closest. But the blonde soldier explains that according to reports, that zone was invaded after the wall fell. From that, the hero figures only a giant soul lizard could have done it. When they arrive, he sees the shield has failed, yet the area is still completely soundproof. That makes Kei think. As he moves through the area, he realizes the Ark isn't just a shelter for survivors. It's more like an NPC town, recognized by the system, similar to what happened in Dreamside, where gathering points appeared in places dungeons could never spawn, known as strongholds. Just then the other soldiers notice their phones finally have signal again and discover they got a lockdown alert hours ago. Reeve figures that makes all this effort pointless, since Zone 1 lies between Zones 3 and 2, and if that alert really went out, then every rope between them was probably sealed off. Even so, Kei decides to try anyway, trusting that maybe there's still some way through. As they move, Kei notices something strange. They've only run into lizard soldiers. If a dungeon had really ruptured, they should be seeing lieutenants or even worse monsters. That makes him think something else is going on. Still, with so few enemies around, they hurry forward and soon reach a massive wall with the border gate. But that brief relief doesn't last, because right then a gunshot rings out. The hero is confused when he sees ordinary people being shot by soldiers and tries to understand what's happening. Rika sees it as a brutal choice. Resources are limited, and if they let too many people in, everyone dies. Kei doesn't think that justifies using guns, but when he sees the sea of corpses, he remembers the Ark exists for one reason only, preserving humanity. Like in Dreamside, it's basically a Noah's Ark experiment meant to save Earth species, except this one only puts humans first. There was supposed to be a system that protected dungeon refugees under some kind of government, but in the first game, it turned into a complete disaster, and Kei hates that he thought real life would be any different. Now the weak, the people without a system, the elderly, and innocent children, are being slaughtered after the sector that protected them fell. He can see the logic, but when he spots a soldier aiming at a mother holding a baby, he knows none of this is right. Right in front of that woman, Daisu steps in and orders them to stop and open the gate. The soldiers immediately notice his spear as a high-level item, so they demand to know who he is. Daisu identifies himself and tells them to open the door, but every soldier gives the same answer. Once the Ark is sealed, it can't be reopened. Daisu begs them, asking them to think of the children. The guards answer with a warning shot. They even apologize but say they're following Kei's orders, and Kay is right there hearing this, completely confused. Then Han appears after killing the soldiers and Desu asks to speak with his friend Kay. The others get upset because even they haven't seen Kay. Meanwhile, the rest of the refugees keep moving, angry after hearing that even if it means risking death from the soldiers' gunfire. But then a huge explosion cuts them off, thanks to Link. The soldiers panic when they see a high-level monster in front of them. Desu, though, feels relieved when he realizes Kay is finally here. He moves through the chaos and tells them to open the gate, but they still refuse. So the hero tells the refugees to step back for now. They hesitate, sure that if they retreat they'll die. Even so, Kay, standing firm beside Link, calms them a little. He makes it clear that as long as he's here nothing bad will happen. Later, from a high building, Kay looks down at the place they took as a temporary base for the night, hoping it will be enough. He uses the souls of the lizard soldiers they killed on the way as an extra layer of protection while he takes care of something else and walks over to Higuan, worried about his condition. Desu says the boy should be fine, but he still needs to confirm something. He wants to know if the man in front of him is really the true Kay. His tone is openly challenging and the hero notices, though he doesn't understand why. Then Desu brings up something he heard from soldiers. Apparently Kay is already inside the zone. Kay makes it clear he has no idea what's really going on in there, but he does understand one thing. The name Kay doesn't belong to just any player, so Desu explains that as the #1 ranked player in Dreamside, Kay was a legend, wild and irresponsible but insanely powerful. When the world changed, his name became a symbol of hope. Over time, Kay's image grew so much that he almost turned into something people worshipped, and some even waited for him like a messiah. Then a Kay showed up in the arc a month ago. That confuses the hero Kay, since it means he spent much longer in the Lord of the World than he thought, and he wants to hear the rest. Desu goes on to explain that this Kay was nothing like people expected. Instead of a savior, he was controlling, greedy and selfish, obsessed with leveling up. Still, everyone respected his power after he killed a lizard general with a single slash, something that sounds nearly impossible to Kay unless the player is truly exceptional. Desu is at least glad to hear that means it's just an imposter, while Kay doesn't like how easily someone stole his identity, not to mention what it does to his fan club. Still, Kay has a hard time believing the arc's other authority figure. Ling Ling ranked 3rd in Dreamside and a specialist in one of the hardest fields, magic, which needs math skills that even hackers or programmers couldn't use so easily. Standing out there took genius-level talent, so he doubts she wouldn't question a fake Kay, but Desu explains that she cleared a D-class dungeon a long time ago. On top of that, everyone trusted he was the real Kay, because he carried Kay's signature weapon. It's a famous meteor sword of calamity, and hearing that leaves Kay stunned. At the same time, in what looks like one of the few stable parts of the city, someone stands by a window, a blonde man in heavy armor quietly looking out. Then one of his subordinates shows up and calls for him. Hearts reports that a monster appeared at the wall of Zone 2. He thinks it might be the Kay who stole the ghost train. That catches him off guard. He thought Kay vanished in Bermuda, but the reports say otherwise. He escaped. The blonde man lifts his drink, wondering how far this will go. Then he asks how the plan is coming along. His assistant says it will be ready in a week, but Hearts cuts that down to just 3 days. With no room to argue, the man agrees and leaves. Not long after, the blonde man gets a message calling him to a meeting. Soon a group of top officials arrives, treating him like he really is Kay. The soldiers watch in silence until one of them reports that the giant lizard stopped before reaching Zone 2 and is still roaming Zone 3. The report comes from Deputy Vaughn's assistant, who shows them a video of sick and helpless civilians being slaughtered. Some look heartbroken, others furious, especially at the people calling this good luck. The angriest one is Yahello. Vaughn bluntly says it really is lucky for them. That only makes Yahello madder, and others have to stop him before he starts a fight. Still, Vaughn releases a strong burst of energy to shut him down, saying that in a life or death situation, any advantage matters. He makes it clear that if Zone 3 hadn't been sacrificed, they all might be dead already. Other politicians agree, saying it doesn't matter if the weak die as long as the strong stay alive. Jethers gets more and more furious, but Vaughn calmly proves he isn't just talking lightly. His own mother is in Zone 3, if she's still alive. Several executives try to calm Shoal while more footage plays, this time of the giant lizard. Now everyone is worried. A C-class final boss is out there, and Vaughn admits that if it reaches them they'll all die. Right now there's only one person who might stand against it, Kay, so all eyes turn to him. They want to know if he can really beat that monster. The fake Kay calmly says no. He admits he's a bit below the monster's level and suggests a simpler plan. Stay hidden and wait. Vaughn says that could work, except refugee groups are moving around outside the zone. If they keep wandering, they might lead the monster straight to them. The other choice is to let them in, but that would break the magic seal protecting the area for 3 hours and leave everyone exposed. Hearts doesn't get why this is even being discussed. To him the answer is obvious. Humanity's survival matters more than the lives of those poor people left outside. And with that the meeting ends. Later on, Janice says he hopes Gun's mother is alright out there. Vaughn answers that she actually died long ago. He only said that earlier to cool things down. Even so, deep down, he only hopes the real K shows up soon. Meanwhile, the real K is still with his group inside the building. As he listens, he remembers the Sword of Calamity well. It's a special weapon, one only someone like him could use easily. Hannah thinks this might be like what happened with Jack, and maybe the sword is just a fake. But Kay is sure of it. That sword is completely real. Hannah is shocked to hear he sold it, though Kay explains it wasn't exactly a normal sale. In fact, that's tied to why he was so annoyed with Jack from the start. Some things make more sense now, even if he still doesn't fully understand everything, like why the lizard man stopped advancing after breaking the wall, and why his copy wants the people in Zone 3 dead. His thoughts shift though when Higuan finally seems to wake up. He recognizes the detective and the little monster by his feet, which he mistakes for a lizard, and starts screaming his head off. No one can calm him down until Kay steps in. Then once he understands what happened, Higuan apologizes for causing so much trouble. But now the other refugees cut in wanting to know what's really going on with Kay and what they're supposed to do next. The protagonist says they need a plan. So the next day, Kay and Disu watch the sunrise, ready to carry out that plan. The detective still has doubts it will work, but Kay makes it clear this isn't about whether it works or not. To him, it's a gamble with everything stacked against them. Disu wonders if they should even try, but Kay moves forward with one thought in mind. This world isn't a game anymore. If they aren't willing to take risks, the world is headed for ruin. Disu worries that showing people the truth might make humanity collapse even faster, and Kay answers with a proverb-like line. Once water is spilled, you can't gather it back. In other words, things are already too broken not to try. So with that, he and the detective just watch as the monsters start moving closer, and Kay realizes that this is the moment they'll learn whether humanity is doomed or if there's still hope. For now, everyone gets ready to run. Meanwhile, at the wall of Zone 2, the soldiers relax because everything seems quiet. No monsters, no refugees, but all that peace is getting boring. One of them even says he'd like at least a little action, though he really shouldn't say that with an officer around. Right then, Dong arrives, surprised by how calm everything is, especially after a monster showed up near the wall the night before. The soldiers explain they only saw it for a few seconds before it vanished. Dong suspects it might have something to do with Jack, so he shows one of them a picture, but nobody recognizes him. The only thing they remember is seeing a high-ranking man who claimed to be a friend of Kay. That makes Dong react at once and ask where he went, but there's no time to look into it, because he senses something coming and orders everyone to get ready. In the distance, they spot a stampede of people running, blasting loud music to lure a huge group of lizard men behind them. The soldiers think it's some kind of revenge stunt and get ready to fire, but Dong raises a hand and orders them not to shoot. As the humans pass through the camouflage barrier, they vanish from the lizard men's sight. Then, taking that chance, they point something out to Dong, and right then the giant lizard appears, but it's already in range, and from far away, hand shot pierces the monster's chest. The impact makes every soldier turn toward the fight. Then Kay gets the survivors ready, reminding them of the plan. Han and Roll would lure the giant lizard to the border, which is hidden by magic, to make it threaten the wall, or better yet, make it look like it might. The goal was to force them through desperation, to send out troops and right then, push the refugees through, exactly what's about to happen. So the moment the gate opens and the guards come out, the protagonist gives the order for the refugees to run, helping them with his skill by creating lizard men to cover them. He also sends Loken, who gladly goes, knowing they just need to bring in a rest. That's when Dong appears. He knows exactly who Kay is and assumes he did all this because he has a real plan. Now he hopes they'll show everyone who he truly is. Then the protagonist starts moving, activating his ribbon as he charges the lizard man. He realizes the creature's power is spiraling out of control again, so he aims for its stomach, where once more he sees the company's hand, the dungeon flower. As Kay closes in, he fears the company may have succeeded in making a forced evolution artifact, so he decides to finish the lizard himself. The monster tries to stop him with its tail, but Kay destroys it with a single thrust. The beast is left confused, and everyone else is stunned too. They thought it would be much stronger, but Ray tells them to hurry up and attack. The soldiers strike its legs, the mags knock it down with spells, and finally Hannah lines up its head, shooting right between the eyes and setting everything up for Kay to make his move. He knows the monster still has plenty of strength, so he can't hold back. He dives in with a fast thrust and pierces straight through it. With the monster defeated, the protagonist sees the soul of an ordinary lizard man and realizes the company was behind all of this in the end. Sometime later, Kay reports that they managed to get the people from Sector 3 into Sector 2. On top of that, they beat the boss monster and cleared the blockade around the zone. But Jack doesn't seem very interested. which confuses Kay since he looked invested before. The merchant only wants to know if they met the people from the Ark. Kay says yes, but they still haven't been able to speak with them. So Jack nearly orders him to make sure they demand a great reward for everything they've done if they want his help to continue. He sees the survivors as future customers and figures that even if the Ark falls apart in the end, he'll get his investment back through Kay sooner or later. So he sits comfortably like a king inside his train, and Kay can barely stand his nonsense. He keeps talking only because he needs to ask one very specific question, and the moment Jack hears the name Meteor of Calamity, he nearly spits out his soda. He instantly remembers promising Kelly there'd be no bad blood between them. But Kelly isn't joking around. There's a tyrant out there pretending to be him and using his sword. Jack apologizes for the mess, but quickly says he has no idea who owns it, now since he auctioned it off on the black market. With that, Kelly realizes he won't get anything else useful from this talk, so he simply ends the call. Then his attention shifts at once when he notices chaos nearby. It looks like a fight is about to break out, and no one wants to step in. They're all just watching from a distance, so Chaos walks over to see what's going on. There he finds the fake Chaos standing over a man in armor, beaten so badly he's barely recognizable, kneeling on the ground. Unlike everyone else, Hearts makes it clear that for his crimes Hearts says the only payment left is his life as he draws his sword. He pulls out the meteorite sword and swings to kill. Then the real Kay shows up and Heart freezes in fear. He tries to say something back, but Kay just keeps walking toward him, pressuring him without saying much. Heart asks what is supposed to be, and Kay doesn't even bother being polite. To him, this guy is nothing but a cheap knockoff. Everyone is shocked to hear the blonde one called the fake, though because of how brutal he was, nobody had fully believed he was really Kay. Face to face, the real one sees someone even filthier and more full of himself than he expected. While the others rush to help the injured man, Heart only seems more amused when he hears Kay's name, and he charges straight in. Kay blocks the strike, and the clash sends out a huge shockwave that makes everyone nearby tense up. Kay quickly realizes this isn't just some copycat. The guy is strong too. He slips past heavy attacks to take position and thrust down from above. Again he's blocked, and that makes Kay ask who he really is. But the blonde man keeps up the act, and the two fall into a savage exchange. They keep trading blows until they end up face to face. Then the soldiers cut in, aiming their weapons and ordering both of them to stop. If they keep going, they might kill everyone there. Kay complains that the weapons are only pointed at him, and the guards answer that they only know one Kay. Still, the Prota insists he's the real Kay. Not far away, two girls guard a door and gossip about the two KS, guessing the second one has to be the fake since the other one has the sword. Even so, they stay careful. Then Don arrives to start the meeting and gives a report on how the issue with Zone 3 was handled, but he notices nobody is paying attention, so he skips ahead to the important part, the clash between the two KS. Before he can continue, Player Goo slams the table, furious that anyone would accuse the fake Kay. Don immediately sees him as an accomplice. Goo acts offended, clearly upset at the thought of losing the Kay with the meteorite sword. He calls the other one the fake and won't hear anything else. Then he pushes the others to leave with Don, warning they'll regret it. That only makes people laugh, until the most famous idol Hannah walks in and stuns the whole room. They can't believe she's still alive, and Don reminds everyone that this is Hannah, also known as Rank 12 in the skies, along with Clark, the Hell Gunslinger. Right away she makes one thing clear: the man pretending to be Kay in the Ark is just a fraud. He still tries to defend him, but Hannah only laughs at him. That just gives Goo more nerve as he tries to intimidate her by grabbing her shoulder, bragging that he's bigger and stronger. Hannah answers with one simple move that throws him off her, and Goo only gets angrier. He uses his skill to turn into some kind of mad dog, but Hannah doesn't take him seriously at all. She presses her infernal revolver right to his face, and the wolf recognizes it at once. He starts shaking when she pulls the trigger, but flowers come out instead. Hannah figures the guy is just a huge coward, while someone else walks in complaining about how annoying things have been lately. That newcomer keeps grumbling about how bothersome everyone is these days, and Don lights up, happy to see his leader Ling Ling finally back. Backing up a little, right when Hannah almost sent Goon to the other side, the Prota watches the mess in confusion, seeing the fake Kay as just a bad captain in a world where money and status mean nothing, and where people survive only through players. That's why losing so many in those massacres is a terrible move, especially since most players there are only around 10 to 20 years old. They clearly have game experience, but they know almost nothing about real life, which makes them easy for older people to control. Those adults are steering the whole ship toward disaster, and Key gets lost in that thought until he notices Ling Ling spell the same one that stopped Hannah's shot. Don tries to catch his boss up, but she already heard everything on the way there. Looking at the two keys sitting there, she picks the easiest answer, Both of them can be K. That leaves everyone speechless at how little she cares. Since she doesn't mind them sharing the title, Don thinks they still need to know who the game's top symbol really is. Ling couldn't care less. What they need are players who can clear the dungeon, and both of them can do that. So she comes up with a simple plan. One will be the national K, and the other the foreign K. Don gets the idea but insists they still need one leader because he knows how much power that title carries, so they have to find the real one. Ling points out that with the sword and Clara's testimony, either one could claim it, so she chooses something more practical, her newest discovery, twin dungeons. They have the exact same trials and monsters inside, so she puts both KS into a contest to see who's the most K of all. Don first thinks it will just be a race, but Ling says not exactly. He ends up deciding she's really doing this so she won't have to handle both problems herself, and Ling doesn't even deny being lazy. To her, this is easier. Send both KS, avoid the extra work, and figure out which one is real. Don admits it may not be the most practical plan, but it is the most interesting, especially coming from genius Ling, who finished university at age 10 and advised multiple labs. That makes everyone just as curious as him about what kind of strategy the world's rank 1 will use. But Ling makes it even trickier. She sends only low-rank players with both teams, sure that the real K will know how to handle it and earn extra points against monsters that aren't that hard. Don feels they should call Doc, but Ling only cares whether the KS are scared. Neither of them backs down. So at the ruined construction site where the dungeons are, everything is prepared for the challenge. Both KS take groups of 10 people each, and feels uneasy that Ling made the team lineups herself, and Hannah also thinks the teamwork will be rough. Hearts warns everyone that if they don't follow him properly he'll kill them, but if they stay loyal, they'll witness the real KS strategy. Then a level 97 player named Hoth asks the Prada what level he is. K tells them he's level 73, and that makes his whole team doubt him. Then Gua comes back to mock them, telling them to give up before they get led by someone weaker than him. But Hoth still trusts the stranger after seeing him stand evenly against the other K with a level that low, even if Gua insists his own K wasn't trying in that fight. In the end, Hoth lets him go and says if they meet again he'll buy him food. Meanwhile, K scolds his pets and hopes they won't do anything pointless. When Hoth asks if they're ready, the Prada says they'll leave in 3 hours, and everyone is horrified by that crazy level of confidence. At that rate they'll enter at night, when the monsters get buffs while the other team is already prepared. K stays calm, sure that in this place everything depends on strategy. After a long wait, night falls and the Prada finally leads his team into the Dark Ruins dungeon. Inside, K's subgroup starts fighting a huge swarm of bats. Hoth leads as best he can, telling them to attack together and protect the low health players while they recover. But there's no time to breathe because more monsters keep coming, and little by little they start feeling like it will never end. Ever since they entered, they've been hit by an endless wave of monsters. They aren't that strong, but there are far too many. On top of that, they each have their own skills and fight in the dark, which makes the dungeon's danger easy to understand. Still, all of that would be manageable if the Prada hadn't vanished the moment they went in. To many of them, entering like this was a terrible idea, so they give up any trust in him and decide to run. A few don't want to doubt him too much though. After all, he was approved by Ling Ling, their savior. To many of them, she's a genius who doesn't make mistakes. Even so, being abandoned like this makes trust hard, and they keep fighting. Getting closer and closer to a dungeon break, they battle those creatures however they can, so desperate that Johto swears if they survive they're going to kill the Prada even if he really is. Time passes and everyone is completely drained. When they're almost out of strength they see another horde rushing toward them, and they finally think this is truly the end, until out of the darkness the Prada returns and wipes out the monsters in one move. That only makes everyone even angrier. They're furious that he left them there to nearly die, with barely any time left before the dungeon ends, but K simply tells them to hurry. There's still one more step left in his plan. They follow in total confusion through quiet halls until they realize where he's taking them, the final boss room. A lot of them get mad when they see that because they're completely exhausted, but the Prada calms them down and says they only need to wait outside while he goes in alone. Nobody thinks that's a good idea, because with a level that low they're sure he'll die in seconds. Meanwhile, K looks at the huge level 95 multi-headed but he has to fight, and he knows he has very little time, so he has to end it fast. Excited, he throws himself at the monster. Outside the others can only hear the chaos coming from inside the room. Then the system sends an alert. A dungeon break has started. Everyone assumes they're dead, and braces for the worst. But after a while they notice nothing else is happening, so Hoth decides to open the door. There he finds K waiting with a wide smile. The final boss is already dead, all thanks to the Prada's restricted mark strategy, which uses the timing of the dungeon break to take advantage of the short window and stop the boss's regeneration. It was the perfect way to end the break before it could really begin. Hoth starts wondering if Kay lied about his level, but Kay says not really. He just climbed to around level 92. He figures they probably leveled up too, and everyone confirms it. He realizes Kay only saw him as a chance, a way to hunt with a group, so he clears out the monsters ahead while leaving a few for them and even praising their effort, but they can tell they never really did anything useful. Meanwhile, in the other dungeon, Hoth cuts down a swarm of bat-like enemies and barely has time to catch his breath before more rush in. Right then, his men report that the boss has appeared. Annoyed by the interruption, Hoth answers by going all out in a fight that ends fast. A single slash pierces the monster. He wipes them out with ease and gets praise from his fans, well, soldiers who cheer him for clearing the dungeon in just 11 hours. Brew is the biggest suck-up of them all, while deep down Hoth hates every one of them, thinking he would have finished long ago if they hadn't slowed him down. Still, to keep the act going, he has to keep copying Kaveya's style. That's why he fought alone from the start and threatened anyone who tried to interfere. He thought charging in solo against everything was the real Kaveya style. Even so, it took longer than he expected, and he still can't stop comparing this fight to the one he had with the protagonist, who actually kept up with him, something he still can't accept. He refuses to believe someone who only recently left the labyrinth could fight like that, and even thinks that if that guy had shown up earlier, he might have ruined the whole plan. If that really is the real Kay, the scary part isn't his current level, it's how fast he's growing. But Hoth quickly pushes that thought away. Even if it were true that Guy is still a rookie right now, and with that level gap, there's no way he'll finish before him. Hoth is sure he'll keep the name Kay, and with this new game, nobody will surpass him. While his men celebrate in his name, the system announces the final result in the arc. The dungeon has been cleared by a single person, and outside the construction site, Ling Ling waits with a cup of tea, noticing that the foreign Kay came out first while the other one is still inside. Hoth already feels like the winner, looking down on the one claiming to be Kay, right as the other dungeon starts turning black. The break begins, putting everyone on edge as they wait for Ling to step in and fix it. But she stays completely calm, just watching everything unfold. Meanwhile, the others can't help expecting the worst, afraid monsters will burst out at any second. Then something strange happens. An error message appears, saying the dungeon has been forcibly closed. Nobody understands what's going on, until in the middle of the confusion, the members of the protagonist's group start coming out one by one, clearly worn out after the battle. Hoth watches closely, sure he's finally looking at the real Kay, with everyone gathered. Ling gives her conclusion. In her view, the result is simple. It's a tie. Group instantly blows up, furious at what he thinks is nonsense. He's sure Ling must be joking, because to him Hearts obviously won since his team finished faster, but she reminds them speed was never the point. What really mattered was who used K-style strategy better, and from her point of view, both sides proved they could do it. Still, she makes one more thing clear. While the foreign team came out almost the same as when they entered, the national team came back much stronger, with their levels rising a lot inside the dungeon. That makes GRU suspect cheating, an accusation that annoys Ling. She makes it clear she sees no problem with the result. To her, a tie is the fairest answer, but Hoth refuses to accept it. His men start demanding a rematch, which only worsens Ling's mood since she wants the whole thing over with. Still, when she sees Hearts has no plan to back down, she gives him one last option. Meanwhile, in a distant cave, a group from the company talks about the recent appearance of the real Kay, who keeps leveling up like a monster. On top of that, the next test to decide the real Kay is the lizard pit. In other words, the arc is heading there, so their leader wants everything ready for the guests. Most of them think they shouldn't worry about that Kay since he's only a rookie, though some warn them not to underestimate him. In the end, they give in, figuring this place is very different from the ghost train, and starting to doubt they need to worry at all. But right then a huge being appears, covered in shadows. It's the dungeon boss, the lizard chief, and he's there to speak with the company people. Back with Ling, she stands at the entrance to the pit and says the test will be simple. The real Kay will be decided by each person's contribution rate. This will be the final test. Hoth is sure a dungeon this hard will definitely settle things, and GAU thinks they're already getting scared. As the arguing goes on, someone points out that even with the power gap between the two K teams, one thing is clear: if both enter the dungeon, it'll probably be conquered. Even so, that's not the real issue. What matters is finding out who the true Kay is, though for some people, maybe even that doesn't matter much. At the same time, Kay tells Han not to follow him, because his level isn't high enough for what's coming. That means Days who won't enter either, even though his loyal follower insists on going. Still, Kay ends up with several players who decide to follow him. He's not fully convinced they're doing it because they believe he's the real Kay. It feels more like they want to see how all of this plays out politically, Just like Han, who probably still thinks the protagonist is lying. That's exactly why K can't let someone like that keep pretending to be him. Especially now when the wall is already close to collapse, so he decides to expose him. At that moment, Ling calls everyone together to organize the raid. The first thing she makes clear is that the 2K groups must not cross paths at any point, and to reach the target, they'll have to pass the Ark's border and head straight for the dungeon zone. Hoth thinks that sounds simple, just attack head-on, but K corrects him. Because this dungeon already had 2 breaks before reaching rank C, that means traces of both are still left behind. Even so, the group moves out. On the way, Hoth explains that the lizard men aren't random monsters. They're organized. They move in formations and react like an army, so if they advance straight at them, the most likely response is that they'll send troops toward the Ark. But that's exactly what the protagonist wants, with Hoth worried about the Ark. Still, the protagonist knows it might have been a problem before, when Ling Ling wasn't there, but now the safest move is to go straight ahead without fear. Then they find Hearts doing the same, cutting down the lizard men. So KS team also starts hunting, tearing through the monsters with ease. That fills the blonde guy with envy, and he nearly lets his guard down and gets attacked, though he handles it easily, despite still being distracted. After seeing that kind of power, Hoth keeps doubting who the real K is. Later they reach the entrance to the lizard pit and go in right away, passing through a door that leads them into a huge jungle. Hoth thinks it's even bigger than she expected, like its own tropical world. But K knows these dungeons can be as big as a country, so finding the boss could be really hard. That means they need to think carefully about their plan, while the protagonist is excited to finally face a real challenge. On the other side, Rio asks them to head for the lizard cave camp. Kaka's surprised there's already one inside, but apparently Link set it up while scouting earlier, so Kak agrees to go. Meanwhile, Hearts chooses the opposite direction, and the protagonist is surprised by how confident he is, like he's done this before. Hearts only answers with a cold look, making it clear he doesn't want anyone in his way. Hannah worries about letting them go alone, but Kaka feels it's better this way. He knows they're dealing with a very strong player, so strong that in a direct fight they might lose. That's why he lets them do as they want. Even so, he hasn't given up on the challenge, and knows they have to keep moving even without a clear plan, so they keep going, with Hoth and another player confused about why the protagonist gave up leadership of the expedition, and doubtful of him, just like they doubt Hannah is really Clark. Rio smiles when he hears all those questions, thinking that makes sense, since even he doesn't get the point of going to the survival camp, which sits in a strategic area with barely any monsters, and was only made by Link as a place to rest. But just before they arrive, Kaka stops and activates his Ryan, then asks Rio when that place was built. Rio says it was made a week ago, and no one seems to have been there since, so the protagonist figures they have unwanted guests. He can tell they're hiding with a high rank skill because he's the only one who noticed them, while the others think they belong to Heart's group. But the protagonist quickly spots one of them, reveal himself a company player, that tells him they have influence here too, enough to place 30 hidden people in different parts of the forest. Kana asks what they're planning, but the protagonist knows it's a carefully prepared trap, so he decides to walk right into it. Meanwhile, nearby, one man insists on taking down a lizard man that might expose their position, even though he's told to stay put. He kills the lizard anyway but gets no time to do more, because they announce that Kaka's arrived. He has to hide at once, watching Kaka move in and wondering why he came alone, not knowing the protagonist had already seen him hiding in the water. The man jumps out fast, shocked that he was found. The protagonist makes it clear he noticed because he's too big. Then he signals the rest of the hidden troops to attack, still doubting Kaka's really alone, right when one of his men drops from a headshot, leaving them even more confused. Kaka tells them to stop overthinking it, because either way, they're going to die to Hannah's needs. Then she starts firing with perfect aim, while the masked men scramble for cover and fail. That gives Kay a clear path to their leader, who got too distracted, so Kai finishes him with one slash. The rest of the group watches in shock and admits that if they had tried to help, they only would have gotten in the way. It's the first time they've seen up close the level of those once called the heavens above the heavens, with Hannah earning herself 2 new admirers. The last masked man begs for mercy, but Kak doesn't care. He kills him, even though Rao thinks they may have lost useful information. Kak says that wouldn't matter. Men like that would only lie to stay alive. One look through his morgues tells him the man is an evil spirit, a sign found only in people who've done truly terrible things. That's why Kay is sure they're worthless alive. Dead they're actually more useful, since he can pull out their memories. So he uses Call of Goblin and summons the soul of the enemy who just died, forcing it to answer. Kay asks what orders they were given inside the dungeon, and the spirit says their mission was to kill Kay and wipe out every player from the Ark. Kay mocks them for failing so badly, but the soul isn't done yet. It had one more order: kill the NPCs. That makes everyone go quiet. Kay tries to keep questioning it, but something strange starts happening, The spirit's voice warps, like something is cutting into the connection. Then just as he pushes for more answers, a bright flash appears, and the spirit vanishes completely. The system erased it. Kay can tell it wasn't just a glitch. Someone likely stepped in with an S-rank skill to block him. He tries to track any energy nearby but finds nothing. Even so, one thing is clear. If someone can do that from so far away, then it's probably a ranker. One who is calmly watching him through an orb right now. So Kay puts together a small team to look into it. Though Hannah warns that moving without a plan is dangerous. Kay knows that. But now hearts doesn't matter anymore. If this were only about the bet, his plan was to gather info while hunting around the camp. Little by little, in AC rank dungeon, being strong or high level isn't enough. What matters is information and reading what might happen next. But now with the company involved, this place feels like it could blow up at any second, especially after hearing they want to kill the NPCs. Kay is sure there's something bigger going on, and then Scott shows up, trying to make sense of the idea that there's an NPC somewhere nearby. Kay figures that's true. They're basically AI-made people who can talk with players and hand out quests. Hoth wonders why the company wants them dead, guessing it has something to do with controlling the dungeon. Kay says no, they can't control this dungeon anymore. The higher the rank, the harder it is to clear or break. E-rank dungeons just change the environment. E-rank ones affect the ecosystem, and C-rank dungeons work more like an RPG, where the ending depends on how much information you uncover. That finally helps the others understand why Kay started from the camp, but they still don't get why the company is targeting the NPCs. Kay guesses it's simply because the system gave them that choice. Right then they hear a loud crash nearby and think it must be lizard men, so they have to decide fast. Meanwhile, a group of strangers is doing everything it can to fight off the lizard men, getting pushed back harder and running out of room to hold on until Kay shows up. Deep down he already knew he'd find them there. A group of NPCs. Seeing there's no escape, they get ready to die protecting Karen, who is clearly the most important one since everyone is guarding her at the center. That's when the system gives them a quest, making it clear they have to help complete the dungeon for its owner, but warns them to choose carefully who the real owner is. Kay gets excited because the choices have finally appeared. Option 1. Help the Horn Tribe defeat the Lizard Men. Option 2. Help the Lizard Men defeat the Warriors. The moment he sees that, Kay realizes the company picked the second one, trying to conquer the dungeon before they do. So to him there's nothing to debate, they only have one choice. They need to help right away, though some still don't understand who they're supposed to support. That annoys Kay because it's obvious they're helping the NPCs. With one strike he drops the first enemy and immediately takes charge, ordering Han and Ryu to scatter the monsters, while the others hide in the bushes and start shouting, trying to trick the monsters into thinking a big group of reinforcements is coming, so their formation breaks before they can react. As everyone moves, Kay knows the hard part is only starting. As he closes in on the Legion's commander, a lizard captain, Kay gets ready, using his mist sword to freeze everyone nearby, just as the lizard men try to rush in, but they don't even get a second to act. He wipes out the ones in front of him, and goes straight for the captain with a thrust. The monster meets him head-on, and the clash is so bright it blinds the captain for a moment, which only makes it angrier. Growling, it brings out its mace and starts swinging heavy blows, trying to crush him. Kay slips through them like it's a game of whack-a-mole, then finally gets inside its range. One hard kick sends the monster stumbling back, totally shaken. Kay coolly says he practiced that move in the Twin Dungeon, then uses his speed to cut the captain to pieces. Humans, monsters, and NPCs all stare in shock, barely able to understand what they just saw. Kay stands there as the clear winner, but now that the boss is down, he waits for the one who's been watching him since the camp to finally show up. He remembers feeling that same strange energy when he fought the trailer underground. He ignored it back then, but feeling it twice so close together can't be a coincidence. He starts thinking it's coming from the dead monster, maybe some kind of long-range skill or even a parasite. Then he feels energy rise out of the lizard's body. At the same time, the NPCs celebrate their win, while Kay orders everyone to finish off the rest, since the enemies are weakened now. So the whole group joins the fight against the monsters, until the few lizard men left alive realize they can't win and run away. The NPCs celebrate a full victory, and Kay sees they completed the Horn Tribe's mission, gaining 5 levels in one shot. At this rate, the boss should be easy. He also notices the others got good rewards too, but then some NPCs draw everyone's attention by making a path and kneeling. Hoth thinks maybe he should kneel too, but Kay just waits and watches as Kareem Horn walks forward through them. She's clearly grateful, and when she reaches him she thanks him as a savior. Kay doesn't even get time to answer, because suddenly everything starts turning blurry and warped. That's when he realizes this world doesn't just have choices, it has cutscenes too. A scene starts playing, showing the story of the Horn village through Kareem's eyes. She watches her brother get captured and tries to help, but her own soldiers hold her back on his orders. He told them to take her away so she could grow stronger, and the group flees by force. Kareem can only look back at her burning village and swear that one day she'll return to save her brother. From then on, she spends all that time training as a priestess until she finds a prophecy, saying that beyond the land of the lizard men she'll find a hero. Holding on to that hope, she sets out on a long search for him until everything snaps back to the present. Kay wakes from the cutscene with the others, and Kareem asks the heroes to save her tribe. Then the system gives them a new quest to save Horn Village and its leader, Organic, within 24 hours. It makes clear that the leader is key to clearing the dungeon, so if he dies the difficulty will rise even more. They have to free him from the seal keeping him trapped. Even though they can accept or refuse, Kay instantly understands what saying yes means, because at that moment, his group's fate would be tied to the Horn tribe. If the lizard men win and turn them into servants, his team will end up the same way. Still, he doesn't really need to think it over. He won't side with monsters against humans, so he accepts the quest and binds their fate. He remembers that in the cutscene, humans captured the leader, so he figures it's the company. That makes this a perfect chance to draw them out, and the one still hiding. He wants to meet that person soon. Meanwhile, at the company's hideout, that mysterious watcher notices Kay looked back at him. Later he asks for information on the Horn tribe, which seems weakened, its leader sealed and its warriors scattered. Someone guesses victory should take a day, but the white-haired man orders them to gather all the lizard men. His assistant doesn't think that can be done, but one threat is enough to make him obey out of fear. He's told to make it happen within half a day, and also to handle the trigger and the start of Phase 2. Season Finale, Chapter 70. Hope this major day better gave you a smile, or at least kept you company. If it did, please leave a like, a nice comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet. I'm posting updates on Instagram too, if you want to follow there. You can also check out more videos here. Thanks for everything. I appreciate you all. Bye.